Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott, and thank you all for tuning in. The snow is falling here beautifully at minus 15 degrees Celsius, and we are having a great time here tonight. Patrick Hazlett is here, his second appearance in about 4 years, and we are talking weird world wars. We're going to let your imaginations go wild tonight. Dirty Filth is here with another cartoon, and the best part of tonight's show, we have all of you, including Race Fan in the gold medal position, Aaron Baca taking home the silver, Tim Mothman and his goatee with a bronze medal tonight. Robert Lamoth, Jenny Whitebear, thank you for coming on in. High Road Flair, Flat Six, Roy Boy, Dino Bravo fan, Jimmy Gonzalez, Ross Lambda. How you doing? Ross is going to be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Puck Elf, nice to see you. Hi, Jennifer Patterson. Joanne, how are you? Desert Rat, SG Nav Spotter, Paul Demon, nice to see you all. JMJ12, happy times that you're back. Thank you for coming on in. And Roger Murray, good to see you. The lovely and talented Kira, I hope you're warm, my dear. Please give me an update if you don't mind. All right. Number 23 in your program, starting at left wing from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. He's heading to the All-Star game, by the way, just so you know. Let's see. Who else do we have? Samantha Hazelwood Gray. Mama Catherine. Mwah! I love you, my dear. How are you? Hope you're having a great evening. W. David Page. Les Paul Holland. Good to see you both. And Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Okay, continuing on here, we have... in our roll call tonight, scrolling on down, who else is here? Skip DeMalou, Abbott Hoffman, Philip Baca, Little Cam over on Twitch. How are you? Richard Elmore is back. Richard Elmore will be signing autographs after the show as well. Light up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Destiny Rocks, nice to see you. And Welsh Hammer, thanks for coming on in. Over on Facebook, Susan Lawrence, good to see you this evening. Digger Dog and Woo Am I? What's happening? And who else do we have here? Millennium, my man. Mr. Cowley, welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his spaced out radio. Mac Geek, thank you for joining us. As we continue on with roll call, Gregory Kugel, welcome to SOR chat. And let's see here. Scrolling on down, Pam Harris, thank you for joining us. Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, Paramarv, good to have you here. Laura Lobbs, nice to see you. Hi, Vanessa. And who else do we have here? Jessica Davenport, good to see you as we continue on with our roll call tonight. Hey, little Timmy Senor, what? Guess what? What? Yeah, I know you didn't pick up your phone when I called you back, so you're leaving me in a lurch. Scrolling on down, who else we got here? We have W. Decker kicking off the super chat tonight. Thank you, Wes. Appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio. You're a good egg, man. Very good egg. Thank you for coming on in. Okay, continuing on with our roll call. Let's get the radio side started. Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, your host with the most tinfoil, as we take a look at Weird World War III. Author Sean Patrick Hazlett is with us as we are doing roll call as we speak for tonight's show. Chris Teen, how are you? Nice to see you. And where are we? Jeff Swenson, thanks for coming on in. And where are we here as we are running out of time? Running out of time. Looks like we are caught up. Waiting for Bill WD40 to come in and lube us up for tonight's show. Once again, be like W. Decker. The super chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do I don't get that, Tim. I don't get that. It's a wonderful thing that you guys do for us. And get your horns up, everybody. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. How are you? I'm sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to let your minds expand as Sean Patrick Hazlett brings in his new book, Weird World Wars. It's a series, man, of what could happen if all of a sudden hell broke loose on this planet. It's a great, entertaining story indeed. Then in hour number 3, Steve Stockton is here for another Among the Missing episode. Followed up by that, we have Super Duke with the Crypted Report. All right, I'm pumped about this one. As author Sean Patrick Hazlett is a technologist, finance professional, and science fiction, fantasy, horror, and nonfiction author. And as well, if that wasn't enough, he's an editor working in Silicon Valley. He is a winner of the Writers of the Future contest, and over 40 of his short stories have appeared in publications such as the Year's Best Military and Adventure Sci-Fi, Year's Best Hardcore Horror, Terraform, Galaxy Edge, and many more. He is also the editor of Weird World War III and Weird World War IV anthologies. He is an active member of the Horror Writers Association. His website, SeanPatrickHazlett.com. I've got it bookmarked. I hope you do too. Sean, very nice to have you back on Spaced Out Radio. It's been a couple of years since we chatted, but I'm glad you're back, my friend. How are you?
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Dave. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on in. What have you been up to? I mean, the world's gone to hell since the last time we talked. I mean, we've had diseases floating around. There's wars all over the place. And now we got aliens, apparently, man. It's all over the map right now. I don't think anybody had this on their bingo card heading into the 2020s.
Well, not only do we have aliens, but nobody's even paying attention. The mainstream news media it's like crickets. And it's great. So I was at the Soul Foundation meeting at Stanford in November. So I got to sit in on all those meetings. And the one thing that really freaked me out is the prospect of catastrophic disclosure. Are you familiar with this concept?
No, very much, my friend. Very much. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of where it's going. And there's another thing that Colonel Nell covered in his presentation, which for some reason the videos still aren't out. but he talked about the implications of, if we have a disclosure, our adversaries also have a vote, but so do NHIs, right? So if we disclose in any way, will the 9 human intelligences start to change their behavior? And if they change their behavior, how could it go? Could it be friendlier? Could they be more involved? Or could it be that we're all an experiment and they say, oh, well, they spoiled the experiment, time to start over? So there's a lot of ways disclosure just in general could go. But in terms of catastrophic disclosure, I think we're on that path. And it involved a number of different things. The one most intriguing one to me was the concept of mimetic viruses, right? And that's something that travels from it's like a mind virus where there's some concept that is probably not true or is based a little bit in truth, and then people start to engage in strange behavior on as a result of that. So give you an example. When we had folks inoculating people in certain third world countries, there were tribes that would there's a kind of a mimetic virus in their heads where they thought, oh, they've been contaminated, so we need to cut off the arm where they injected the shot, right? So if the government or some authority doesn't modulate this and roll it out in a clean and thoughtful way, somebody else will, including our adversaries. Imagine if China just came out tomorrow and said, hey, they're real. Your government, governments of the United States and Canada and in the Western world, I know you might think that you're all republics and parliamentary systems and democracies, but your government's been lying to you for 80 years, right? That could be a massively destabilizing event for the United States. And then how does the United States react? Are they going to say the Chinese are lying? Probably. Would we believe them? Probably not. So it's going to get spicy in 2024.
And you know what? I totally agree with you. And I think the biggest problem that we have right now is the secrets. Okay, there's too many secrets out there. And until some of these secrets come out, what fears me the most about this, and Sean, I don't know if you recall or not, but I'm an experiencer as well. I'm one of the only true journalists covering this story that's also an experiencer of the UFO alien phenomena. And I have no problem admitting that. But the problem that we have is all the what ifs that might be covered up. Okay. What if Eisenhower traded humans for technology? What if somewhere deep in the Pentagon, there is a list of American people who've been taken multiple times and the government knows about it? We're talking things that could bring the United States Republic down on UFOs of all topics. Never mind the technology that has been hidden or the fact that they may have encountered true alien life forms from distant solar systems or dimensions or planets or whatever it may be. I mean, there is a lot of fear that is going on right now within the other side of the walls from what I'm hearing. 50% want it out, the other 50 want the secrets kept. And this isn't just about, what is currently hiding for US technology. This is truly about UFOs and aliens, not stupid UAP crap. We're talking UFOs and aliens. Your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. And here's someone, this was posed to me. I'm not going to mention his name because he doesn't do podcasts, but he's very involved in the topic. I talked to a guy who's a PhD at the University of Chicago in a kind of sociological field, let's just call it. Okay. And he studies this. And the question he posed to me is, if your audience is familiar with the Wilson memo, I'll just go through it really quickly. In that memo, it was written by Eric Davis, allegedly. It was found in the Edgar Mitchell estate, and that's kind of the reason it came out. And Edgar Mitchell was an astronaut who started the Foundation for Noetic Sciences, etc. So he was very interested in the topic. In that particular memo, there were allegations, or the memo alleged that Admiral Wilson, who I believe at the time was he's the J2 on in the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So number two, not number two, but number one intelligence official, at least on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the organization that kind of organizes the U.S. military. And he had gotten wind of this program that was about alleged crash retrievals. So he reaches out to these people because he's not aware of this this SAP, right? This special access program. And given that he's on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he should know about that. It's something he should know about. Okay. So he calls these people and he organizes a meeting. They agree to meet with them. And he says, hey, what's this crash retrieval program? Are we picking up, Chinese satellites that crashed and, Russian satellites and stuff like that? And they're like, no. Like, are you telling me this is like ET stuff? Like stuff that crashed, things made not by human hands? And they didn't even blink. They're like, yes, that's true. Right. And he's like, well, I'm going to need to see this program. And there were like 3 people in this meeting. There was kind of a lawyer, there was a program manager, and then, somebody else. But he demanded access to it. And they said, you're not on the bigot list, right? Now, the bigot list is a whole description of where that came from. It came from World War II. It is it's backward for to jib, which meant to Gibraltar. And then anyway, that's bigot doesn't mean, like a prejudiced person in this case. It just means this code name for a list. So they're like, you're not on the bigot list. He's like, what do you mean I'm not on the bigot list? I'm in charge of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And they said, you're not cleared. So what this professor at the University of Chicago suggested was they didn't even blink when it said you had, allegations that this is a crash retrieval plan for NHI craft, which leads him to believe, and also me to believe, is if that's not really the secret they're hiding. So my question is, what secret are they really hiding that having someone visit a facility to see this stuff, they don't want anybody to know? So, we could speculate, in many different ways, particularly dark ways, what that could mean. So if you put yourself in their position and say, if I were in that position, what secret would I protect at all costs? And I don't think it's, I think abductions and experiments and things like that may be part of it, but that's something the government could work through. I think it's something as dark as those things can be for some people. And to be fair, there's some people who have very positive experiences. I want to acknowledge that, but I don't think it's all balanced. I don't think it's all good. I don't think it's all bad. But I think there's something far darker that they don't want people to know. So one possibility could be that we're not in charge. We're not in charge anymore. And there's a remote viewing done by Pat Price, who's one of the most skilled remote viewers of the 20th century. And it's about a 48-page document that's never seen the light of day. There's a remote viewer today, Daz Smith, who's come into possession of it. And I believe it's potential that he might release it sometime in January. He got it from Hal Puthoff. And in this document, this is the remote viewing that Pat Price did of the 4 bases, Mount Zeal, Mount Hayes, Mount Perdido, and there's another mountain I can never pronounce that's in Zimbabwe. But as part of that remote viewing exercise, he also looked into whether or not the U.S. government at the time, this is 1972 or 1973, had been infiltrated by NHIs. And whatever that means, right? It could mean influenced, it could mean a hybridization program. And it didn't have as far as I know, it didn't have a negative or positive bent. It's just people in key positions. And he put them in this remote viewing exercise by name, either by name or by position. So it didn't say the president of Harvard or whatever, but it was like president of this university, president of that university, the head of this corporation, the head of this government agency, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason it hasn't been released is, look, it's remote viewing, right? It's not always going to be 100%. But it was also Pat Price. And Pat Price read individual file folders in a secret NSA program that the CIA didn't know about. And when the CIA mentioned the name of Project Cue Ball and all this stuff in this West Virginia location that he had remote viewed, the NSA freaked out. And there are also allegations that later on that Pat Price's the circumstances surrounding his death are very suspicious. Right, his body was cremated before his wife was even notified of his death. All sorts of like really weird things that are not super kosher. So we could have one possibility that they've just controlled. The government may have infiltrated back as far as 1950 or earlier than that, maybe since the beginning of the species. Who knows? That could be one possibility. There's another expert on this field. He's a professor of anthropology I think at Montana State University, I believe, and that's Dr. Michael Masters. He's he's an anthropologist. He's an expert on the facial structure and what kind of grays look like and how their appearance is coincident with how a species evolves, right? It's a process called, or not process, but it's called neoteny, which as a species evolves, they look more and more childlike, right? So if you look at your children today, that's kind of what will end up. So bigger eyes, bigger heads, the facial features that aren't as important, like the mouth and nose, are minimized, smaller ears, etc. So he has a book where he kind of goes through, lays out this case. And his hypothesis is that they are our descendants from the future, right? And they're coming back to ensure that they, there's certain things that have to happen in order for them to exist. And if one of those things for them to exist, if you look at them, they're kind of ideally engineered for either space travel or living underground. Well, why would you live underground? Right. So
True.
there could be some sort of calamity that's coming that wipes out a huge percentage of the human species. And if you look at the remote viewing work of Lynn Buchanan, who saw a series of man-made natural disasters between 2020 and 2040 that wipes out 3/4 of humanity. You also look at Stephen Schwartz, who did similar work. And then, so there's also Daz Smith, Ed Reardon, who've also done some recent work, also are kind of seeing something, kind of the event that changed the world in their future forecasting group. So there's a lot of, that could be another alternative. The third is it might just be a treaty. It might be a treaty, as you mentioned earlier, that Eisenhower signed that guarantees their secrecy. And if we let that loose, then it might invalidate the treaty and we lose all the goodies. So those are just three things, I came up with off the top, not off the top of my head, but after, kind of deep consideration. But there are many other reasons. But you can imagine, it could also be that we're an experiment. And like I said at the very beginning, if too much of it gets out, it ruins the experiment. And these beings that may or may not be far more advanced than us just decide to clear the deck and start the experiment over. So there's 4 options for you. I don't know which one's real, and it could be none of the above. It could be something else.
I've heard some similar, and let's add to it a little bit if you don't mind. I mean, we're all conspiratorial here a little bit, so
right.
We'll rub the tinfoil a little bit. Two things.
Yeah, we're just speculating. We're just speculating, Dave.
2 things that I heard. Number one, the U.S. government right now, the reason why we went to the whole UAP thing over UFOs was because you could cover UFO under UAP, but you couldn't cover secret projects under UFO. So when the Schumer amendment was brought forward and then changed at the end by the 4 old Republicans, all right, Mike Turner and many others. The reason why is they were protecting what America has flying, that the American public has no idea about. Because remember, The United States military over the last 40 years, we just don't introduce new planes. Okay, they've been flying for a while. You take the F-117. It started flying in 1981. It took service. And yet the public didn't find out about it until Jim Goodall released a photograph of it that he caught over Tonopah Air Force Base in Nevada in 1989. The first public photo of the F-117. Well, then you have to disclose. Okay, otherwise they wouldn't have. Right? So the question is, how many squadrons of aircraft are flying in the United States or at secret bases around the world like Diego Garcia or wherever that we don't know about? That's number one, that they're trying to protect that asset. Or number two, this one's a little bit more difficult to swallow for people. And I have heard from a couple of sources now that the phone call was made. And the American government answered it. And those from above gave a date of when they are coming. And that way it allowed the U.S. government enough time to get ready and to start opening up talks that the phenomenon that they have been making fun of people and ruining people's lives for the last 70 plus years was finally coming true because they are coming. So those are the two that I've heard. What's your thoughts on those?
So I think the first one, there are aspects of the first one for sure. There are definitely things in our skies that we don't know. In fact, I think the Phoenix Lights incident was very likely a semi-rigid airframe of sorts, like a remotely piloted reconnaissance platform that just kind of they lost control of, and it started kind of rolling around because you didn't see sudden jerky movements. It was just kind of like the way a rigid airframe would fly. So there's certainly aspects of that. But the other thing that if you look at but I don't think that's what's preventing them from releasing, because if you look at that bill, right, it specifically talks about NHI craft. And if this were a secret program that the U.S. developed its own stuff, right, it has nothing to do with NHI. So the eminent domain provisions wouldn't apply to those sort of things, but they would certainly apply to craft, unless the craft that you're talking about, Dave, are craft that integrate some of this technology. Then it gets a little muddy. In terms of the kind of they're on the way hypothesis, there are multiple people who've made note of this, and I mean all sorts of different sources. So John Ramirez, I believe, said kind of 2026, 2027. And the date keeps changing a little bit. It kind of oscillates between 2026 and 2027. Chris Bledsoe, who's seeing entities that are almost kind of different from what you would think traditional ETs are. They're more kind of the angelic variety. But the reason I think his story is pretty compelling is the intelligence community locked him down as soon as he started having these experiences. But he also sees something happening in 2026. I think the way he puts it is when the red star Regulus aligns with the eye of the Sphinx at dawn, right? Whatever that is, astronomers can check to see when that particular alignment will happen. But that's when he claims there will be kind of a new knowledge, whatever that means. And then, if you believe in channeling and I have never investigated it. I haven't spent a lot of time on it, so I can't say one way or the other. But Bashir, who's one of those channelers, has also said something similar, but he's been more explicit about it, saying that ETs were likely going to arrive in 2020.
Yes. Sean Patrick Hazlett. We're World War III. And 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's like WrestleMania for the guy. We're going to get into it and more on Spaced Out Radio with Sean Patrick Hazlett when we return. That was a fun half hour, man.
I hope hope I read the room right, because I went woo real fast.
Oh no,
But
the audience appreciates that kind of woo. You
yeah.
just woo along. Woo, never be afraid to woo here.
Yeah, and again, I'm trying to attribute it to who said it and whatnot, because I don't know. Without experiencing some of these things very directly and personally, belief is one thing, but knowledge is another. Like, I don't know. I don't personally know, because if anything has ever happened to me, I don't remember it, or it hasn't been it hasn't been black and white enough to register as something that's for sure. You know what I mean? You might see lights in the sky from time to time, but chances are they're going to be an asteroid, or a Perseid meteor shower or whatever. But you never know.
Well, we're soon going to see. I'm hearing between 35 and 36 now.
Oh, they're pushing it way back that way?
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to survive that, my friend. I don't know if we're going to get that far.
I think we will. I mean, just it's very tough for me to say, because I try and stay. I'm a very political guy, but I on this show I have to kind of button my on the politics. I will say this. I think after losing over 360,000 troops, I think the Russians, whether they win or lose, okay, they've taken a beating.
Yeah.
In Ukraine, way more than they expected to take. I don't care whose side you're on. I'll tell you right now, being of Ukrainian descent, okay, I'm not a fan of what Putin did. Okay, that's me. But I will say this, in keeping it on the straight and narrow and unbiased as a journalist, as I do, or I try to do 99% of the time, I will say this. I think after Russia getting their asses handed to them in many of the battles, and them still fighting like it's World War II, like if our troops retreat, we're going to shoot them, just like we saw in movies like Enemy of the Gates and things like that. I think it's really showing a lot of the weaknesses we had for the big bear, and whether or not they should be feared or not, outside of their nuclear missiles. But we could get more into that when we get into
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think the problem. So there's two things here. So the problem with the Russians is, anytime they get into a war, they always blunder. It's always a disaster at the very beginning. When Hitler invaded in June of 1941, they lost maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million. I mean, something ungodly, something crazy. And what the Russians typically do is they trade space for time, and they trade bodies for time. Now,
yes.
They've definitely learned, which is one reason you don't see anything on the media, or not anything, but you see far less coverage on the media. The other thing that they have is they have a 3-to-1 demographic advantage, right?
Usually they do.
So it's kind of like the American Civil War. You have the Ukrainians who are fighting. I'm not conflating the ideology with the Ukrainians, but in the American Civil War, the Confederacy had superior generals and just was much more skilled at fighting, and the Ukrainians fit that category.
Give me one second. Hey, Duke, if you're going to be that way, that's not cool. To give me a shot and I tell you to take your own advice, and now you're leaving. Okay, that's not cool. We have a segment to do later on in the show. You can't give me a shot and not expect one back. It's not how this works. All right? So let me know if you're out for the Crypted report. That way I could find someone else. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. So the Russians it seems that kind of pattern is repeating. The difference, though, this time is that the Russians and the Ukrainians, by the way, have a demographic, not collapse, but the kind of the narrowest part of their demographic profile
Yeah.
is military age men, right? So that's going to probably be the limiter. The way I expect that particular war
Hold on
to
one.
shape.
I hate to cut you
No
off there. We
worries.
got to come back in like 4 seconds here. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. We're glad to have you here. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go again with Sean Patrick Hazlett. Weird World War is what we're talking about tonight, and the fiction, the science fiction, how truth is stranger than fiction. Can we use that term, Sean?
Yeah, I think reality is definitely stranger than fiction because none of the stuff. Well, I almost think sometimes subconsciously it is on my bingo card, right? Because Weird World War III, the first anthology, came out, as I said, I think earlier, 14 months before Putin actually invaded the Ukraine, which is effectively a proxy war for the Western world against the Russians, because we are deeply involved in helping the Ukrainians in more ways than just providing them with money. We're providing them with intelligence and advice as well. But the way I think this thing shakes out is the way I always thought it was going to shake out. Putin operates best in frozen conflicts, and I think what's going to eventually happen is both sides are going to kind of peter themselves out, and then Russia and Ukraine will sit down at the table, probably give away Crimea to the Russians, and then kind of settle on some sort of awkward solution. And then for the next 5 to 10 years, Putin is going to do whatever he can to, mess with Ukrainian democracy, elections, and try to get somebody who's a little bit more friendly to him in power. But I don't think these two can continue to hurl weapons at each other. But here's the thing that worries me is while all of this is happening, the U.S. really hasn't done all that much to amp up ammunition and in terms of military production. So I'll just give you an example. So I'm not sure what the quality of the Russian tanks are, but the Russians have amped up their tank production. Either I don't know if it's new tanks or if it's refurbishing old tanks, etc. But at the end of last year, they could produce 2,100 tanks. Guess what the U.S. can produce right now? Just armored vehicles in general. I'll just tell you the answer. There's a plant in Lima, Pennsylvania that can crank out 15 to 20 tanks a month. Okay, so you're talking max 240 tanks a year. So you're at about 10% Russian productive capacity. Now, you might make the argument that Russian tanks are much lower quality, and that would be true. But even as a former, tank commander, platoon leader, I would be hard pressed to defeat 10 tanks with one. Right? I might be able to take out 5 pretty quickly, and we did things very similar in the first Persian Gulf War. But the Russians are more skilled than the Iraqis, and I would, and they've operated in a high intensity conflict for the past year. So I would be very cautious. The other thing is, if they decide to turn their sights on Germany, right? Poland's the only thing standing between them and, driving all the way to the to the French border. So because the German military, we've been they might put up a little bit of a fight, but they're not ready. They're not ready like we would be. So it would be ugly. And the other thing is you're coupling this at the same time that you have a recruiting crisis in the U.S. military. I mean, they actively, behind the scenes, were actively considering scrapping a division in order to kind of take care of this. So you have this kind of war in Russia, Ukraine, and which is also we're sending a lot of munitions to, and money, which I agree with. Right, that's the cheapest solution. The alternative is sending Americans and Canadians and British over there to fight as well, and that's not ideal. But we also have the Israel Palestinian conflict, where we're also sending weapons and munition and support, and we're doing it at the time when we're slowly starting to ramp things. But the other difference is this isn't World War II. All of our, or a huge portion of our resource base is not in the United States anymore. Like, we got to ship some of these chips from China, from Taiwan, and they're much more sophisticated. So you can't make as many of these weapons as you used to be able to make. So, we've gone all in on the qualitative advantage, but at the end of the day, that's, you're going to need mass to fight someone like the Chinese if that ever happens. So that's the other shoe that can drop in 2024. If I were Xi, and my plan was to have reunification with Taiwan by 2049, and I looked at the internal. Well, that's the other thing that bears mentioning. There are 4.2 billion people in 76 countries this year. Though all those 76 countries are having elections. So you have embedded political instability in these in areas that comprise 4.2 billion people. This is the best. If China ever had a shot, this is the time. They might not be ready. I think there's a Business Insider report that talked about endemic corruption in the Chinese military, and they're putting like water in some of their missiles in order to siphon off funds for individual corruption. If that's true, it would certainly put a damper on any potential action in Taiwan. But there's a again, we're dealing with journalists here. No offense, Dave, but in recent years, journalists don't have a great reputation for getting to the truth. So if the Chinese military wanted to seed in or wanted to start a strategic deception campaign to convince us that there's absolutely no chance, they're not ready, they're gonna there's that. But if I'm Xi and I'm looking at the polls in Taiwan, which just had an election, by the way, 3 days ago, there were three parties, and the party that the Chinese didn't want to win won. Okay, so the same time, 86 to 87% of the Taiwanese population does not want to go back under Chinese control, particularly after Hong Kong has been handled. So Xi looks at those two facts, and maybe he says, you know what, I'm probably not going to convince him. I've been spending all this money flying Taiwanese politicians to the mainland, trying to influence these people, and at every turn, I'm getting rejected. I look at the United States, I look at Canada, I look at the potential rife for political instability ahead of at least the U.S. election, for sure, but also in Canada, there's been plenty of political instability. I look at that, and then I also look at everything else that's going on and where the U.S. attention is focused, and now might be the best time. And I think that's the calculus, and they've also been prepping for it. So there was an article recently in the Washington Post at the end of last year that talked about a cyber campaign that was uncovered called Volt Typhoon, where the Chinese were systematically trying to infiltrate public utilities and stuff like that in Hawaii, Western transportation hubs on the California coast, facilities, telecommunications facilities in Guam, all places that you would want to target to slow down or retard the potential response of the U.S. military in the case of a Taiwan invasion. So, I'd give it a 40 to 50% chance of happening, and I think there's a high probability that report about the Chinese military being out of sorts. I think there's a chance it's a strategic deception campaign by the Chinese themselves.
Well, I mean, at the same time, though, it always when I hear people like yourself talk about this, uh, I hear a lot of vitriol going on, not from you, the speaker, but from the news that is presented, and
Hmm.
it's downtrodden, man. It's very downtrodden, and people today are so tired of this political game, whether it's
Hmm.
about UFOs, whether it's about land, whether it's about something happening 8,000 miles away or 20,000 miles away or whatever it may be. At some point, doesn't you know and I realize politics is a much larger game than just getting elected to your thing. Like, you have to play the game. There is no choice but to play, and it's like the board game Risk. Everybody's playing Risk. It's just a matter of whether or not you get invited to play the game and you actually get pawn pieces to battle with. But at some point, the public is having enough of this, man.
Hmm. Hmm.
They are especially the American public, they are done with war. They are done with policing. They are done with trying to help everybody else while everybody craps on them. I mean,
Hmm.
look at all the countries that are burning American flags, number one, but the minute crap hits the fan, where's the Americans? Where are they? Why aren't they helping us? I mean, I can see where the public just has had enough. And is it at some point we have to listen to that voice, man, because this is getting real old real quick.
And that's where it gets really complicated, right? So here's the issue with Taiwan. In terms of like an emotional tie to the island of Formosa and the country of Taiwan, Americans really like that's not an American would say that's not my fight. I got nothing to do with that. But here's the problem: over the past 30 years, Western corporations, the government have incentivized people to outsource, and what's happened is you have 90% over 90% of advanced semiconductor manufacturing and chips are manufactured in Taiwan. Not only that, over 60% of all semiconductors are manufactured in Taiwan. So if the Chinese were to seize that island, the National Security Council estimates that an invasion of Taiwan would cost the global economy $1 trillion globally. I think that's an underestimate, because what would happen is you would have tremendous constraints on your ability to basically do anything. You need to buy a car. Well, guess what? The price has tripled, and not because of inflation, but because because the supply for the parts and chips that you would need are almost impossible to find. Right? You only have 10%. You can only acquire 10% of them. Right? So the supply is down by 90% or 40% in the case of less sophisticated chips. So it would have a massive negative impact on the global economy. So the dilemma with Taiwan is we wouldn't have to intervene because we wanted to intervene or because we wanted to stand by our commitments, which are important. But at the end of the day, we would have to do it for survival, for at least retaining the current level of lifestyle and the way our entire system works. Like, you would have severe economic hardship if you didn't. But to your point, Dave, the average Joe who's watching this, right? I talked about a recruitment problem at the very beginning, and that a lot of that is it's actually one specific demographic that is almost entirely the source of that recruiting problem. I'm not going to mention what that demographic is, but you can kind of figure it out from the rhetoric of the last 5 years. But that particular demographic staffs a huge portion of the active combat units of the U.S. military. So you have support units and then you have combat units. And at the same time, what's happened is over the past 20 years, people who served in the U.S. military saw the debacle of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and looked at it and be like, and are saying like the people running the show, and this is neither Democrat or Republican in the United States. This is the people who are running the show don't give a s, right? Don't give a crap. And as a result, they're not encouraging their children to serve, and they shouldn't encourage the children to serve. So where that comes to a head is kind of the long-term future of making sure that we continue to have our way of life is going to be jeopardized by folks who are going to be, who are going to reject that call to service. And then that will likely force the government to come in and kind of force people to serve through a draft, in which case you have both forces on the left and the right, kind of finally agree on something. And, this would not be tremendously popular. In fact, it would be a huge source of anxiety for the people running things. And you know what, to be honest, it should be, because they've mismanaged just about everything over the last 2 decades.
Oh, very much so. And I think it's, to be a voice of reason and for people here for a minute. I really do believe that, people have forgotten how powerful their voice can be. I mean, we look at the farmers over in the Netherlands and what we're seeing in Germany right now, where they're taking their farm equipment and spraying, manure all over the parliament buildings. The Dutch did that; they got immediate response. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know that you're not going to shut down farming. How do you do that when you have a growing world population? It doesn't make sense. Just because you don't want some cows to fart. I mean, it's,
Yeah, and at the same time, like, borders are flooding with like countries are, we're spending all this money, um, defending countries that are, thousands of miles away, but we're not even protecting our own border. And and it's hard to determine, is that just incompetence or is there some grander scheme behind that? Like, it feels like somebody's just trying to make the United States fail, but that's so like the level of logical leaps that you would have to make in order for that to be true are insane. So it's just it's hard not to blame it on anything but systematic incompetence. That's the best I can do, unless, as I said earlier, somebody else is in charge and wants this to happen.
But you also have to be careful too, when you're studying and reporting on or writing about this. I mean, there's one fake journalist in our field who runs a conspiracy program, who last year tried to say that there were 250,000 Chinese nationals lined up on the Canadian border were stuck into Canada and were ready to invade the U.S. within weeks. The way I look at it, and there's people who believe that. You know what I'm saying? And that's the sad part. There's people who believe that, when it's like, okay, do you know how much it takes to move 250,000 troops? You need ships, you need airplanes and everything flying not into Vancouver Airport or Toronto Pearson International. You need invasion style people to move 250,000 troops. And I would think that there would be some sort of security with NORAD in order to say yes or no to that. But I mean, the sad part about it is there's people out there who believe that propaganda. And the propaganda right now, unfortunately, because of the way the mainstream media has gone over the last number of years, from actually being unbiased reporting to political stature, we have seen, the fringe media pop up, and a lot of it is good, but the majority of it is so false that people can't even tell what's real and what's fake anymore being written.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the issue, is that you're right. You can't tell what's real and what's fake. So just to so I'm going to quote the New York Times here now. Now that's again, it's with a huge caveat because I don't know if I can trust the New York Times either, to be honest. But so what they're talking about in relation to that specific statistic that you talked about in the last year, so I think they're talking 2023, more than 24,000 Chinese citizens have crossed the border from Mexico. Okay, so we're not talking 250,000, we're talking 10% of that. Now, that's more than in the preceding 10 years combined. Okay, now, do I think all those people are Chinese agents? No. Do I think a percentage of those people are Chinese agents, i.e., saboteurs, people who can be agents provocateur? Absolutely. But what's that number? Probably fewer than 1,000. But they can do tons of damage by targeting key infrastructure. And if the Chinese are planning for something in Taiwan, that might be something that they would do. It would they would less likely be blowing things up, but more likely just doing influence operations and providing intelligence back to the homeland. Because if they did start blowing things up, we would start doing the same thing in China, and we can do a lot more damage than the Chinese can do to us.
Oh, and you know what? It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because I mean, it also goes into how many hidden terror cells are around, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
we hear about terror cells all over Canada, the United States. We don't know who is actually, fighting for who here. But I mean, shouldn't those have been alleviated by now, especially after 9/11? I mean, you would think so, yet there they are.
Well, there there are certain government agencies that are focusing their resources on other priorities, and I'll just leave it at that. Right. So part of it is that these agencies are being incented to look at other crimes and other organizations that they see as a larger threat internally, and as a result have just kind of lost control of what's going on in the border. So they've done a great job in terms of ensuring that we had kind of minimal attacks following 9/11. I mean, you had the Boston Marathon bombing, but and in terms of in the greater scheme of things, they had an excellent track record of preventing those things. But something tells me in the last 5 years that they probably dropped the ball and stopped focusing on what's important and started focusing on what's not important and what's not or is a minimal threat. And in fact, in many cases, they're you know running operations that entrap people in order to justify increasing budgets and things like that. But to the point that have there been people who've come into this country? I would be shocked if the Iranians didn't send people across. I would absolutely be shocked. Um, Remnants of ISIS, maybe, but I think we've done a pretty good job of completely annihilating them from a military perspective. But there could be a lot of stuff that we let slip through.
Oh, and that's for it's not just the United States, it's any government whatsoever. Because what seems to used to be a priority is no longer a priority. And, you see it in everything. You it opens my eyes to a lot, man. It opens my eyes to a lot. And people need to pay attention that there is still a real perverse world out there that wants to see havoc, right? And it's everywhere. And that's the sad part about it. Our guest tonight, science fiction author Sean Patrick Hazlett. SeanPatrickHazlett.com is his website. He's got an incredible series called Weird World Wars. Russia, China, and everybody in between. What are we going to do about it? How do we do it? We got Sean for another hour. We will take audience questions in hour number 2 as well. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this, everyone. Stay tuned. We will be right back. All right, Sean, we're going to take a quick break here. Let's see what Dirty Filth is up to here. What do you got there, Filth? And what cat was that? That didn't look like Blobbert.
Well, I had Gremlin, Gargoyle, and Blob.
Oh, yeah. Sean,
Yeah,
we got about
Gremlin's
5.5
the orange guy.
Take it away, Phil.
Take it away, me. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a good night. Hello, secret dinosaur. You know who you are. All right, so because we've had Tic Tacs and orbs and jellyfish, I figured I'd just draw a little gray alien talking about, back in the day, they just had clunky nuts and bolt craft that would crash regularly. And, he's getting old. He's probably from like 1940s Roswell survivor of some sort. But hello, Bomber. And Flat Six. And everybody else I missed. I didn't really get a chance to look at the screen. Fighting off cats, trying to draw cartoons at the same time. I know Tim messaged me and he said that he got my calendar, which doesn't make any sense because the day that I published it, I ordered 3. I'm still waiting for them. That doesn't make any sense. Does the guy that published them buy them the same day don't show up? It's just grumpy pants about that. Hi, Kira, fellow traveler. Yeah, but Tim, you live in the desert area. You don't get down to minus 43 or whatever it was the other day in the morning. It was terrible. He is drinking a tasty beverage. It's Crypted beer. 6-pack for $12. Thanks, Amy. I appreciate it. I remember they had that rubber ducky UFO video. They gotta bring that one back. That was a weird looking one. That one just kind of just vanished. I like all these weird ones that come out and everybody on UFO Twitter is just fighting each other over. It's a balloon. It's a whole bunch of balloons. It's not a balloon. It's bird poop on a lens. Awoke alien. Well, this alien is definitely awake right now. He is breathing and walking. Oops, you know what I forgot? Forgot to put the shadow underneath him. That way it looks like he's actually standing there. Scribble, scribble, scribble. That's all right. It'll look better in the book. There we go. First H2O engine has been manufactured. Great. We already have enough trouble getting water. Let's just use it to drive vehicles. Let's get. What they got to do is do those UFOs that hang out near lightning storms and volcanic activity. That should charge your vehicle. Figure out how they do that. Oops. I keep reading his ice cream storm, and I just want ice cream. Bloody hells.
All right, I am back. And Dirty
Hi,
Filth,
Dave.
great job on the artistry, of course.
Thanks, pal.
And did you tell everybody where you can find your book?
You can go to filthy.com, FYLTHY.com.
There you go. Thank you, buddy.
Have a good night, man.
Have a good night, Filth. I want to say a big thank you tonight to W. Decker, Mama Catherine, Shaq Valet, Forrest Louis ×2, Dutch Hank, Jeff Swenson, Pam Harris, and Flat Six for the amazing super chats. Thank you very much. Hi, Nina Williams. How you doing? Human Carl over on Spreaker. How you doing? Good to see you, buddy. And who else has come on in here? Let's see here. I think we are caught up. We're caught up. Look at that. Oh, there's Aloha Dave. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. And here we go, everybody.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. I almost said Dirty Filth. Our artist. Wow, weird. Continuing on, we want to welcome you all to tonight's show and our terrestrial affiliates, as well as our digital stations, TalkStream Live, KPNL, and Odyssey Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the newswire, check out our swag as well. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Macrophobia. Macrophobia is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We continue on with author, futurist, sci-fi writer, Sean Patrick Hazlett. His Weird World War series, very popular around the world in every major bookstore and online. Sean, welcome back to the show, my man. We'll get you to
always a pleasure, my friend. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Man, we've hit a lot of topics so far. One of the ones I want to get back into for a little bit here, because I know we talked about it right off the bat, but I still think it's important to kind of delve into. You made a weird statement in the first half hour. What would it be like if Russia or China actually disclosed UFOs and alien contact first? Now, we all look at it that this is an American problem. Okay, the Brits refuse to answer any questions about it. Canada has been kind of silent. The Five Eyes, we know they're working together on UFO stories and information. But what would it be like if all of a sudden, screw everything else that's wrong on this planet so far, but let's just focus on ETs, UFOs here for a few minutes. How would the world react if it was China or Russia to disclose?
Well, I think step one is no one would believe them. Okay. And then I think step two, as part of step one, they would probably invite a bunch of Western journalists that are highly credentialed, high trust, et cetera, and then they would have somebody. I don't know if there's anybody high trust, at least from our perspective, over in Russia or China, and they would invite scientists back to kind of verify some of this stuff in order to make it stick. But I think the U.S.'s impulse would be to first deny, second to obfuscate, and then third to counter-accuse, right? Because by denying, they'll buy themselves some time, but a very fearful revelation will overcome the defense establishment, and that will be linked to the thought that, well, if we don't say something, people are going to think that they're much more powerful than us because they have access to this technology, right? So and so then they're going to have to kind of retrack and retrench. In the meantime, China will be playing for maximal propaganda value, right? In the sense that they'll say, oh, look, the arsenal of democracy that always tells the truth and is the shining beacon on a hill has lied to you systematically for 80 years. And they're telling you that we're the bad guy. So, and on kind of given what's going on, internally in the United States in terms of like how people are, view the government, it's just going to further undermine their, belief in what's going on, right? So it'd be tremendously destabilizing for the United States, and frankly, it should be, because if people are going to lie to us for that long, they don't, they don't deserve to be in charge. They're in charge, and they should be respected. They're the authority, but they don't deserve to be in charge by perpetuating a lie.
No, and I can understand that, but why, after everything that has come out about UFOs since, say, the New York Times article in 2017, why would anybody have an issue with China or Russia coming out with their own disclosure program? Why does it have to be solely on the US? And never mind Russia, China. Why couldn't it be Australia? Why couldn't it be Spain or Portugal or Canada or any other country?
That's a good question. It perhaps could be. I mean, there are likely other countries that have this technology. Something, crashed somewhere else and they got there before the US could get there, or the Russians or the Chinese could get there, and secreted away different technology. So I think part of it is the Western world tends to follow the United States' lead, and the kind of the elites who are in control of the system, the limited number of people who know about this problem. And I think according to Rush, it's something insanely small, at least in the United States, like 50, which should horrify anybody. The fact that we only have 50 people working on this problem is a gross miscarriage of competence. Like, that is the most incompetent thing, I think, or one of the most incompetent things I've ever heard. Like, how can you not be viewing this problem like the Manhattan Project or the Apollo program and trying to, if we think we can exploit this technology faster than our adversaries, what are we spending $1 trillion on, if not to quickly get an answer on these issues? But I think the Western world, I think, is constrained by the U.S., and I think the Chinese and the Russians aren't disclosing because there's no need for them to disclose, right? There's no push by their people to get this because they control the information, right? There's no reason for them to do it. The only reason really would be for them to undermine the authority of the United States and to diminish the credibility of the United States for its alleged role as this beacon of justice, the American way, goodness, apple pie, all that stuff. And I think that kind of shatters that facade by making kind of one-upping the US and actually increasing a lot of goodwill for the Chinese or the Russians if they were to disclose this, because they could also come out and say, look, we want to work on this problem, we want to be collaborative. And then what's the US going to do? No, we want to keep our secrets, right? Which, for national security professionals is probably the right thing to do. You probably don't want to share the stuff with the Chinese or the Russians, but still, it would be a massive destabilizing. It would not massive, but it would have a destabilizing effect on Western populations. Wouldn't result in overthrow of governments, but it will just further undermine the authority of the people who are occupying positions of power.
Yeah, and I can see that. I mean, is it about ET contact? Is it about the technology and the new revolution that could come along with that? I mean, what do you think would cause this to happen, or for this story to truly explode?
In terms of to actually come out, to actually have the government come out and disclose.
Yes.
So I think if there's some agreement way back when that a former U.S. presidential official, let's just take the Eisenhower allegations at Holloman Air Force Base. Let's say that's true. I don't know if it's true. I have no way of independently validating, but let's assume it's true. Let's say they had some agreement and the ETs wanted to disclose, and Eisenhower said, look, we just fought a near genocidal war with the Germans and the Japanese, and then we're facing the prospect of global nuclear annihilation with the Soviets. Give us some time to acclimate the population. Based on the response from the 1938 radio broadcast of War of the Worlds, we don't want to sow mass panic. We don't want to undermine religions. Give us some time, and then let's say they agree on a date, 50 years after Roswell. So that places you at like 2026, 2027. And what might be happening is this agreement lit a fire under the collective governments of the West to prepare for it and prepare the population for it. So that could be what we're seeing in terms of this, push for disclosure. On the other hand, it could just be humans being humans. You have factions that want to disclose it. You have factions that don't. Some are mixed. Some probably legitimately believe it would be a destabilizing thing to just let people know that we're not alone. And there might be people who like to be one of the 50 elite who are in control of this secret, right? And you ask yourself, well, what gives them the the authority to be that person, right? It is likely something like that, where there are multiple factions that are kind of trying to decide. But that could be one thing that would force a rapid disclosure. The second thing that would force faster disclosure would be someone who just leaks the program. And the problem with that is it couldn't just be one person, because if it was one person, that person could easily be isolated and destroyed and quickly put into prison, right? And their story would go away forever.
And this is what we see happening with a lot of these whistleblowers that want to come out. They can't because they don't want their pensions ruined, or worse, end up in Leavenworth.
That's right. Now, the interesting thing about Grush is that everything that he says has been approved for dissemination. Okay. So whatever he's saying, I believe him, but the other thing that you have to understand is you're only going to get part of the information. You're not going to get all of the information, because there's stuff that is so, that they don't want to have to talk about, like abductions and potentially experimentations, also human mutilations, not let alone cattle mutilations, right? There are some isolated instances of human mutilations. So part of this is you have to start with the most prosaic things first. So, and which is, we have craft. We've been working with this stuff. We also have non-human biologics, but they never really talk about agreements or anything like that. But that might be the next stage. I don't honestly know if we're ever going to get into abductions, because on the one hand, the government would have to admit that they happen, and there's absolutely nothing the government that we're spending $1 trillion on in defense spending. Well, it's not really exactly $1 trillion. You're in the open budget, you're a little over 800 billion, but close enough. But there's nothing they can do to protect or defend you against these things. Or there's something darker, where they signed an agreement where experimentation was allowed. And then how do you, the legal liability of that sort of program could be extremely destabilizing. So, again, like, I don't think if you had leakers, you would have to have many leakers all at once, telling the same story. So I think even now, if the government wants to keep the lid on this, they'll keep the lid on this, right? Because they have access to a variety of sources and methods to keep people quiet forever. So anyway, I think what you're hearing from Grush has been approved, and I think it's the beginning of a organized disclosure process. And I think the catastrophic disclosure is less in our hands and more in our adversaries' hands. I think that's where they could come into play. Or the NHIs could show up early or engage in a variety of displays. I was just talking to a physicist, Dr. Kevin Knuth, on
Yes, smart man.
my very very bright man, on my podcast Through a Glass Darkly with Sean. You can find it on YouTube. And in what he told me in that interview is that the craft are getting much more aggressive with U.S. pilots. Like they're doing barrel rolls around jets that are on bombing runs in Syria, like really aggressive, playing chicken and then just like spinning around the craft. And for that pilot, probably a very terrifying encounter, right? In terms of just like seeing their death right in front of them, and then suddenly these things go off. So whoever or whatever they are, they're nudging us a little harder than they used to in the past, right? Where they would just shut down nuclear, the logic on nuclear warheads and things like that, like they did at Malmstrom Air Force Base. So there's something that's definitely in the zeitgeist that's changing. But there's the other issue too is there's so much misinformation out there too that it's hard to figure out what's real and what's not. Like we see this spaghetti or whatever, the jellyfish UFO, right? And like to
Yeah.
me, it just looks like a flying trash bag, right? If you've ever spent any time in the desert where it gets really windy, I'm not saying it's a flying trash bag, but there's stuff that comes out that is deliberately seeded that might be right. I mean, you had like the Miami Mall incident, right? That's probably a hoax, in my opinion. I mean, look,
You know
I don't
what?
know.
I want to say something about that because I've said this to our audience a couple times here, and I'll say it to you. News helicopters usually fly a couple miles away from any action, and they just have extremely powerful cameras that can zoom in. And I agree with you. I'm not sold that the Miami incident was an alien incident. However, if you look at that camera view from the helicopter, okay, from the news, the actual feed from the news camera, not someone taking the stills from it, everything is in focus except that being that the cops are around, standing around. And now you'll look at it differently. That is what is holding me up on this. Is there is that little but okay? The mall is in focus. The police cars are in focus. The traffic is in focus. The stairs leading up to the doors are in focus. The trees are in focus. The police officers are in focus. Their guns are in focus. What isn't in focus is that gray thing right in between them.
Do you think somebody in post-processing dubbed it out, or do you think
No,
if it's real,
that's
it's
a
like some
live
sort of
shot.
camouflage?
That's a live shot.
So why do you think it wouldn't be in focus? I'm curious. I haven't heard this, so I'm intrigued by it.
Okay. So these cameras that they use, I'm not a camera expert whatsoever, but I do know that a number of years ago, there was when I worked in mainstream media, I knew people who flew in the helicopters, and they would say that they could zoom in on anything from miles away. And there was this in North Vancouver, there's this cliff where a dog kind of fell off a cliff and then landed on a ledge. The owner went down to the ledge to try and rescue the dog, but couldn't find a way back up. So they brought in a rescue team, and they've got the media helicopter that's about 4 miles away, zoomed in on this. So it's looking like they're probably filming from 200-300 feet. from this dog and this person. And they were getting, because they were on a live footage of this, they were getting phone calls from people saying, get the hell out of there. Let the police and the security search and rescue do their job in rescuing. Well, what they did was they said, look, people, just to show you, we're not, we are miles away from this. Our cameras are that powerful that we can zoom right in to look like we're there. And they actually did a reverse zoom. They zoomed out to show that the cliff was about this big on camera, maybe an inch big. And, so knowing that was probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago, cameras have improved. So when you go look at that footage again, whether it's on Twitter or on the news reel from the station, pay attention to the helicopter, because that helicopter is not right on top of the scene, but everything around it is in focus, except for that gray, what they call the being, that they couldn't get in focus. Everything else is, and it will make you wonder.
Do you think it's because, let's assume it's real, because again, I don't know, I haven't investigated, but let's assume it's real. Do you think it's because that being is vibrating at a higher frequency than the people around it?
Absolutely. And it's the same thing that I believe with something like Sasquatch or a lot of these cryptid creatures, why we don't get good videos out of them is because I believe they have some sort of ability to make themselves blurry, make themselves camouflaged. Okay. I don't know how. I'm speculating. I've got tinfoil on when I say that. But it just makes sense. And Sean, I mean, you're a critical thinker. Okay. And go look at that footage. And I would love to get a social media response from you on that, just to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look, and I'll definitely get back to you, because now I'm intrigued, because again, my mind's firing in terms of, if real, what could that mean, right? Could just be just messing with photons, right? Like, wearing like clothing or a suit that reflects the environment. But for some reason, it was either malfunctioning, because you can still see something, right?
No, everything else. Here's the problem with that theory. Everything else is clear. Okay. Everything else is clear except that being. And it's strange.
Yes. The reason I'm asking is if they had the capability not to be seen.
Oh, the alien. Quite possibly.
Yeah. So why were they seen?
Who knows?
Right? It could be a suit malfunction. Right.
Like I said, I'm no expert on this. Okay. But if you watch, just do yourself the favor. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible.
What do you think about the Nevada incident?
That one I think was played up.
Yeah.
That one was. I know people from alphabet agencies who looked at that and went to the location. They said it was just a family playing it up. They wanted.
It was also strangely timed too. Like these reports, these strange reports, tend to spike whenever there's a whistleblower that comes out that says something that's likely to be true, right? Then you have all sorts of other reports that seem less likely to be true, right? And it's almost as if it's intentional.
When we come back from the break, I want to ask your opinion, as somebody who's looked into the weirdness of the world, how will people react? I know it's a little bit off topic from where we were going, but I want to know your opinion, how people would react to disclosure. SeanPatrickHazlett.com is his website. Weird World War is what we're talking about. A little bit of aliens in there too. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back. All right, we are clear, my man.
This is going to be fun because
Yep.
we have data points. Again, I'm not. There's a slew of topics that I can't even go into for good
So
reason.
hopefully you'll be able to. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm going to try something here. I haven't had much luck with this lately because for some reason, ever since my last Microsoft update, it's kind of screwed with StreamYard. Where are we here? Let's go here. Look how clear that is. Okay. Can you see that?
No, I think you have to change your window. I just see the upcoming guests. Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Right there.
There we go.
Okay. Look how clear that is. See the trees, the roads, the line, the police cars.
Yep.
All right. All right. They're showing everything. There's the front of the mall. Look how clear that is. And look, it's clear that being there. You can see the cops on the ground and whatever that being is on the ground as they move it in slow motion. Right there.
Huh.
See, everything else is clear.
Yeah, it is. That is kind of weird, but it's so blurry you can't even tell what it is.
You cannot tell what that thing is, and to me, why do you, if let's just say hypothetically, it is a young person carrying a gun.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you need that many? Why would you blur it out? There's no reason for it. But you look at the cars; they're all clear. Everything
Yep.
else is clear on that.
Yeah, I would need this. Like yeah. It's
Yeah.
a tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah. By the way, completely off topic. All right. Big thank you to Joe Mug in the chat room, sending me his beard and hair. Got that in the mail today. That's a beard right there. That's going to go in the beard collection that we have from our listeners. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Sometimes you can't make this up, Sean.
What are you doing with the beards? Why are people sending them to you, Dave?
Because I made the mistake one day and said, hey, if you shave that beard, I want it. And that's how it started.
And what do you do with them? They go into like a vault?
I got a shelf up here. Right up here is where I store them.
You should make like a Saint Francis of Assisi hair shirt out of these things.
This is now Joe has hair down to his ass. So apparently some of his hair is in there and the beard is in there. I mean, how he even got this across the border, I really don't know. But it happens. It happens.
It's a technique. It's definitely a technique.
Enough it is. Sure enough. Peter Benton, thank you for that lovely super chat. Along with Force Louis ×2, Jeff and Mama Catherine, Flat Six, Shaq Valet, W. Decker, Dutch Hank, Pam H. Very much appreciated, everyone. Thank you very, very much. Yep, I could knit myself a sweater with Joe's hair right there.
It's not a very comfortable shirt to wear, though, I hear.
No. Stargazer, knowing Joe, yes, I am sure it's beard hair. No, I do not have Joe's ass hair. It was a giant beard, he says. I love it. Yep. It's weird. I know. But, yep. That's beard number 2, Joe said to me.
Yeah, how many have you collected?
I think up there's... This will be number 6.
All right, so you're not... It's not... You haven't gotten inundated yet.
No. Tim Mothman said if he ever gets rid of his goatee, he's setting it on up. So,
You should
I don't
have a
know.
fundraiser where everybody shaves their beard.
That's what I'm doing
hair.
with this one. That's what I'm doing with this one for our SOR fan party in Reno on May 10th through 12th. If you want to come, Sean, you're more than welcome.
It's in
Show
Reno,
up.
May
Yeah.
10th through 12th.
Yeah.
I might think about it. That's not far. I mean, it's probably 3 hours from me, but I live in Northern
Yeah.
California, so it's not.
Yeah. I'm shaving the beard for charity. Here we go, everybody. Next half hour. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can join us on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Final time tonight, we say hello to Sean Patrick Hazlett, Weird World War III and 4. You can find him on his website. That would be Sean Patrick Hazlett with a Z or Z if you're in the U.S. .com. Sean, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. Again, always a pleasure.
I want to hit you up on this fun topic since we're having a good time tonight. How do you think the public is going to react overall if disclosure were to happen? True disclosure. I'm not saying this narrative that we're following on a confirmation standpoint right now, but I'm saying true disclosure. Aliens are here. They've been here for thousands of years. How does the public react to that?
So it depends on what they disclose. If there's kind of the short form of disclosure or long form disclosure. So short form disclosure is president gets up before a lectern and says, this is an important announcement. I want to let you know that we are not alone. I've listened very carefully to the Grush hearings, and everything he says is true. That said, for national security reasons, we can't provide any details. This is going to be an X number of years disclosure process. Just bear with us and understand that we have to be careful given what we disclose and what we don't, revealing sources of methods, etc. That's the short form, okay? Which is basically barely nothing. The long form disclosure is that they go in and have a publicity campaign where they go through and first roll out the most anodyne aspects of, and I don't think there's any anodyne aspects, right? All of it is earth shattering, but they start with we're not alone, and then slowly work their way to possibly never human mutilations, but at some point they're going to have to acknowledge that this happens. So they're going to have to provide, at the very least, in that case, a world or kind of an exopolitical picture of what this really is. So are they all ETs? Are they a mixture of ETs, ultra-terrestrials, time travelers, demons, jinn, angels, kind of the full deal? Because I think that's another thing that makes all of this much harder to stomach and to package, right? Because there are a lot of people who focus on nuts and bolts, but anybody who spends a minute on this topic knows that there's a non-physical aspect to this phenomena. Now, is it spiritual? Is it paranormal? Is it just a level of technology that we don't understand yet? Regardless, people report telepathic experiences, out-of-body experiences, sometimes levitation, sometimes precognition. So there's an element of high strangeness that the government can't really get into right away. Now, I think if there is a disclosure plan, and it's a big if, this probably would have started a very long time ago and would have been seeded in movies and just getting us used to some of the potential topics that they would go through. Okay, so that's kind of, those are the two extremes. I think if you start with the short disclosure process, it'll be a disaster from the government's perspective, because people are going to be like, what do you mean we're not alone? What does that mean? And you're going to have an increased risk of mimetic viruses, where people are like, there are hybrids everywhere. That guy's a hybrid. That guy's a hybrid, right? And just taking every single piece of UFO, UAP lore and assuming it's true, which, Dave, as we know, a lot of it's misinformation. So the government would have to combat that problem if they didn't release enough of the info. So you're going to have chaos, but the chaos is going to be focused on trying to get more information. It's going to undermine the authority of the government, and you're going to freak people out, and you're going to leave reality to their imaginations, and their imaginations are very creative. So you're going to have that risk. If you do the long form, you can be a little bit more careful about what you relay, and you can just start with the things that are easier to stomach, and then over time eventually work your way to abductions and what it means. And the best way to do that would be to provide society with a mental map of how all this interacts. So you would first start with, if there are ET civilizations, where they're from, how long they've been here, and then you work your way into, have they influenced human society? Why or why not? How so? I think there are certain religious traditions that will be completely fine with it and will be able to adapt to it relatively easily. When I talk to experts, so this is not my opinion, but I interviewed someone named Dr. Paul Thigpen, who wrote a book called Extraterrestrial Intelligence and the Catholic Church. So, he's a Catholic. He's been present at exorcisms and all this stuff, all sorts of, things that would make a diehard skeptic blush. What his view is, certain religious traditions will be fine. So the Catholic Church will be fine. Buddhists will be fine. Islam actually will be fine. They have in their tradition the ability to recognize this. But I think there are certain Mormons too would be fine. But there are certain kind of the fundamentalist side of any religion you're going to have problems with. So, there'll be a lot of questioning, and I think also there'll be a lot of disbelief. So part of this program, if they're rolled out properly, would consist of proving to the public, like, here's a craft, here's what it looks like. Journalists who have security clearances, who have been cleared, can come in and take a look on the inside, videotape it, send it out. Here's some biologics. Here's where this came from, the Kingman craft or the Aztec craft or crash. And at least tying it to some of the lore that turns out to be true, so it's tethered to something. And then you can use folks in the UFO community to propagate that information in a way that, that confirms their biases. Now, there are going to be some books that were written that are completely wrong. So there's going to be a reluctance in the UFO community to come out and admit that. The government counters that by saying this person's just, they discredit the people. So you're going to have, some friction and issues with that. Now, where it gets really tricky is on the legal side. That's number one. And the second part is going to be, if there ever was or has been a hybridization program, and if they have a list of those people who've been abducted or have had any interaction, you could have some serious issues with that, particularly those people, if those people are ever revealed. Because if you have folks whose worldview has been shattered, start to get paranoid and start to, assume that those people are, quislings in plain sight, right? Agents of an alien extraterrestrial intelligence or hyperdimensional intelligence, non-human intelligence, whatever. And they're here to supplant the human race. You can imagine those sorts of mimetic viruses emerging that it could be very dangerous for some of those people if human factions form that are look, I don't need to. We don't need. You don't even need to go that far back. You can go in the last 5 years, and you saw it happen. Okay, and I don't need to specify. I'm sure your audience can figure that one out, right? Like people will lock into authoritarian mode and do some crazy stuff. But again, I think if you are deliberate about it, you answer people's questions in a very modulated, focused way that's methodical, and you stretch it out over some time, so you give them time to adjust to the reality. Like you don't start with there were human mutilations and they were here and here, right? That would cause mass panic. You start with we're not alone, and a number of them are friendly and help us. And you start on that foot, and then you can work your way into some of the darker topics.
I see that, and I see where you're going with the religious side and everything. What about the financial side? I mean, people are going to be wondering what happens to say the oil industry if all of a sudden free energy comes out. What happens to the economy and Wall Street if all of a sudden we're entering this unsuspected, new technological revolution of free energy of technology that we've never seen before and now have been handed, where we have the ability to uphold, move beyond gravity and gravitational force and everything along with that, maybe even time travel. I mean, this opens up a real Pandora's box here.
So, yeah, that's a big question. I mean, you could probably have a conference on this particular question. And you probably should have a conference. Like there's somebody in the government should organize a conference on something like this, because there's going to be certain technologies that humanity's ready for and others that they're probably not. So let me give you an example. So there's something called Shor's algorithm, which if you use it, it takes, millions of years to crack encryption. But if you use a quantum computer, you can, crack certain encryption techniques in seconds, right? So let's say one of the implications of this is some highly advanced quantum computer application. You're going to have to make sure that you develop some sort of quantum computational encryption method before you release that to the public, so that people's bank accounts don't suddenly disappear as the hackers who have a jump on everybody else figure it out first. So there's certain implications of technology that you can introduce right away. Some that you'd have to wait for humanity to gradually come into its own. But there's also human technologies, meat space technologies, like we talked about telepathy, right? Let's say that's something we all can do. We just need to learn how to do it or unlock something in our genetic code in some manner. That, in the long run, that would be a fantastic skill to have, because it would minimize the people lying and doing all sorts of the bad things that people do. But in the short term, it would be absolute utter chaos, right? You find out you've been working for somebody who's a sociopath. You find out that a woman finds out that the lady neighbor is having fun with her husband, all that sort of stuff. You can have all sorts of problems that emerge from that. So I think that's number one. Number two, I think if you were to approach this, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this, but if I had to approach this particular issue, I would create some sort of a custodian organization where all of these technologies would reside. And I would organize a process such that these corporations that are in industries that would effectively die once they were launched would have the opportunity to bid on some of this technology, in a free, fair auction process. And not only these energy corporations, but other startups, Elon Musks of the world, who would also, I'd rather have SpaceX looking at this technology than Lockheed Martin, right? Because there's just a different sort of mindset in order to approach that. So part of it, you would have some monetary way to buy into this, but also, people would have to organize proposals. So there should be some sort of a process to select people who don't necessarily have the full financial means, but are most likely to be able to exploit that technology right away. Then you would also have to overlay national security concerns, right? So let's say we're talking about anti-gravity. Well, you could make weapons that would, suck everything within a mile of something into a gravity well and crush it, right? So you could have, you have to be very careful about who you doled that technology out to, make sure that some of those organizations had security clearances and all that stuff. So it's a complicated problem, but I'm worried that people aren't even thinking about it right now, especially if you only have 50 people in the government, in the US government, that are familiar with this problem. I guarantee that these guys don't have a plan. There's no way.
I think there is a plan in place, but I think it's very highly controlled.
Mhm.
I mean, we've heard that there's an invisible college that is running this. There's a group of 4 to 8 people that are truly in the know of everything that's going on. The rest are on a need to know basis. I've heard 50 to 100, 200 people, and that's it. And people wonder, well, how could that happen? Explain maybe how compartmentalized these government agencies are. I mean, you look at the military, there's guys who make, for years didn't know they were making screws for or rivets for the Apache helicopter,
Mhm.
or the tires for an F-117. They had no clue. Their job is to make tires.
Yeah, so you have 50 people or whatever, approximately 50 people who are in the know, but you could potentially have several million people who are working on aspects of this problem but have no idea that they're working on aspects of this problem. In fact, there are people like Dr. John Brandenburg who would come up with a theoretical model for any gravitic propulsion or something else and take it to a certain point, and then somebody in the Air Force would come to him and say, okay, stop working on this topic, and we don't need you from this point, thank you very much. So there's a lot of that happens, and they don't really know where it goes. A lot of times I think even with the Colonel Corso case, people were just given technology and said, "Can you like figure out how this works?" And if they ask what it is this like Russian or Chinese? And they might be told something like that, right? So they're just working on this stuff that they don't even realize has non-human or extraterrestrial origin.
Very true. Very true. Do you see countries collapsing over this?
Um,
Maybe not countries, but their political systems.
it depends on what the reality is. Right. So here's an example. Let's say the true reality is we're an experiment. Um, we're kind of just the next stage. There's going to be a stage after us. And that's it. We're just lab rats. If that's the case, that that could be problematic. We might be able to work through it, but it would be difficult. Or it could be that there's a cataclysm coming. Let's say they're time travelers. There's a cataclysm coming. uh, 3/4 of you aren't going to survive. Good luck, right? In which case, the economy would absolutely collapse, right? Because people would be trying to, make sure to find a way buy themselves a golden ticket to survive whatever comes. So it all depends on what the reality of the situation is. It could also be that we don't know what these things are. We just know that they exist. They come at any time. They take people whenever they want, and there's literally nothing we can do about it. Um, I don't think the world collapses, but I think, I think people just kind of learn to internalize that and just incorporate that into how they assess risk when they go into national parks or whatever. So it depends. I know it's not really a direct answer, but it all depends.
Well, I think it is. But you know what? I'd like to take that a step farther as we have about 4 minutes left. What about third world countries or countries that have primitive uh, primitive humans still living in the jungles, whether it's Africa or Brazil or wherever that don't know that there are outside of hearing this strange noise in the blue sky, that there are sentient beings out there, let alone giant cities and metropolises and sports and everything. I mean, they live without everything.
Well, on the other side of that coin, they might know more about this stuff than we do, right? Based on their oral traditions and, going back all the way, back to their earliest history. So they might actually be uh, best equipped to handle it. Because again, in the Western world, we're always we're kind of have this kind of scientific materialist mindset where we're the dominant species on the planet, we're the only ones in the universe, we're better than everything else, and having to humble ourselves to understand that there's stuff out there that is likely far more intelligent than we are, far older than we are, far more advanced than we are, can be humbling for a lot of people. And I think indigenous tribes and things like that have uh, much more robust traditions in the sense that they could probably handle the fact that there are gods out there or there are nature spirits that are mysterious and far more powerful than they are. I think they'll be just fine.
Well, I hope so. With 2 minutes to go here before we have to say goodnight to you, Sean, I want to say a big thank you for coming back on and breaking down, a lot of these world extremes that we see going on right now. I think it is a call for hope and prayer that eventually, sometime, we can finally take a breath and relax. I mean, the stress on people these days is second to none. And if they ever wake up to the alien UFO topic, holy cow, man, are they going to explode? They really will.
It
And
might, on the other hand, it might be a relief. It might be, thank God there's somebody who knows what they're doing, who's out there, right?
oh yeah, I hear you there, my friend. Do me a favor, tell everybody where they can find your books as well as where they can find your podcast and other information about you.
Sure. So you can find me on YouTube and Spotify at Through a Glass Darkly with Sean, where I cover the paranormal, remote viewing, and the UAP topic, as well as geopolitics. You can also find me at my website, www.seanpatrickhazlett.com. And then you can find Weird World War China, Weird World War III, and Weird World War IV any place books are sold. Go to Amazon right now and you can get it on Kindle. You can get a paperback, and I appreciate your support.
We appreciate you coming back on and talking about these topics. I mean, you're so versatile in everything that goes along, man. I mean, I don't know how you do it, but you do, and congratulations to you for it.
I appreciate it, Dave, and it's been an absolute pleasure being on the show. I had a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, me too, man. And I don't usually stray off the main topic so much. So tonight was an absolute breath of fresh air to be able to talk about a little bit of political climate around the world with you. Like we try and stay away from politics because people get hammered with it every day, but we somehow managed to keep it on the alien train. That's good enough for me, my friend. That's good enough for me. Thank you very much for coming on Spaced Out Radio again, Sean. We will do it again soon.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Sean Patrick Hazlett.com is his website. Coming up next on Spaced Out Radio, as we're about to head to break here, we have Among the Missing with Steve Stockton. Then Robin Haynes is in for the Crypted Report. Her hair is looking absolutely on par and fantastic tonight. We will be right back with the UFO or the Crypted Report as well. Spaced Out Radio continues with Hour 3 next. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, man. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. We'll do it again soon, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, my friend.
Take care.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Bye. And we'll say goodnight to him. And quickly here, David Stein, you're asking, why is our show a 1-day delay on the radio? Because the way this show runs, we play it live tonight, and then I have to edit the show in order to prepare it for all of our radio stations, and they play it tomorrow. That's why we never hear a dated show. It's one of those secrets, man. You got to keep the secret. Okay, I hope you can. Hope you can keep the secret. Yeah. It's good. It's good. I will be right back, guys. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot of show coming up next. All right. Yeah, something a little bit different than we normally do tonight. It's very good. want to remind all of you, if you haven't already and you're thinking about it, just do it. Come join us for the 3rd annual SOR fan party in Reno, Nevada. That would be May 10th through 12th, 2024. This year, just 4 months away. We want to see all of you there. VIP tickets are $100. Regular tickets are $60. We're going to bring in a bunch of people for you. And we want to also have you there so that way you can take in a live show, get a live swag bag, hang out with everybody. It's a fun time. Merle is working on a ghost tour for you. And Melinda Leslie is going to be there for a Skywatch. Talk to the people in the chat room who have been at our previous 2. They'll tell you it is a blast. So come join us. Go to info@spacedoutradio.com, info@spacedoutradio.com, and book your tickets today. We'll get you tickets out soon, okay? If you want a VIP, you have until April 10th. Because we got to get some swag printed up for that. So thank you tonight to W. Decker, Mama Catherine, Shaq Valet, Jeff, Dutch Hank, Louis ×2, Pam H. and Flat 6, and Peter for the super chats. And don't forget to shop at our store, spacedoutradio.com. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Let's go to Reno and party. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the 3rd and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us tonight, Clam? Macrophobia. Macrophobia is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can join us on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Steve Stockton from Among the Missing joins us for another weird story.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Among the Missing YouTube channel on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'm about to take you on an unbelievable journey of people just like you. Their stories and encounters will haunt us on Among the Missing. 55-year-old Barbara Bullock and her husband's cousin, Donna Biles, and Donna's boyfriend, Jim Ramaker, planned to hike Barbara's favorite trail on July 18, 2007. The Bear Creek Overlook Trail is about a 15-minute drive from her home and is a 4.5-mile out-and-back trail near Victor, Montana. This trail is rated moderately complex and is frequented by hikers. It offers a breathtaking view of Bear Creek and the surrounding mountains and boasts stunning wildflowers. Donna woke up feeling unwell on the morning of the hike and decided not to join. However, Barbara and Jim still wanted to go, so around 8:30 or 9 a.m., Barbara informed her husband Carl that she and Jim were going to the Overlook and would return later for lunch. Carl then spent the morning working on a carpentry project. Donna grew concerned around noon when she realized that Barbara and Jim had not returned from the hike. However, Carl reassured her that Barbara was an avid and experienced hiker who knew the area well, so there was no need to worry. He was confident that they would return soon. Additionally, Carl informed Donna that Barbara was always cautious and that she brought a backpack with her containing food, water, and a firearm for protection against predators. Around 2 p.m., Carl received a phone call. It was a Forest Service law enforcement officer. She asked me if my wife's name was Barbara, and I instantly thought something terrible had happened, Carl said. After finding out that Jim had reported his wife missing, Carl rushed to the Bear Creek Overlook Trail, hoping to find her. However, she was nowhere to be found. Jim Ramaker reported that he and Barbara hiked the entire Bear Creek Overlook and stopped for lunch. During their hike, they encountered two young men on the trail and spoke to them for about half an hour. After finishing their meal, Jim and Barbara started to head back to the trailhead. At one point, Jim stopped to admire the view and looked back for around 45 seconds. When he turned back around, he discovered that Barbara, who had been walking ahead of him by about 20 or 30 feet, had vanished. Despite calling her name and searching the surrounding area, Jim found no sign of Barbara or her backpack. As Jim was searching for Barbara around the Bear Creek Overlook Trail, he noticed that the area had loose shale rock, which would have made it difficult for anyone to move about quietly. Despite this, Jim didn't hear any screams or cries for help, which made it less likely that Barbara had fallen over the overlook. Jim eventually gave up his search and headed back to the trailhead. However, he found that the road leading to the trailhead was closed for maintenance that day, and construction workers were there. Jim briefly described Barbara to them and asked if they had seen her, but they said they had not. However, the workers did recall seeing two young men with a black and white dog leave the trail earlier. Jim reported Barbara missing shortly after this. After 2 weeks of intensive searching and investigation, Ravalli County Sheriff Chris Hoffman said Barbara Bollock's disappearance was a mystery. Quote, "We are perplexed. We have combed the area in the vicinity of the disappearance very well. No trace at all has been found. We would like to verify, if we can, that Bollock was even on the mountain that day." End quote. Now, theories on Barbara's disappearance range from an intentional disappearance to an animal attack to foul play. Barbara Bollock was last seen near the Bear Creek Overlook in the Bitterroot Mountains, west of Victor in Montana, on Wednesday, July 18, 2007. She is described as a Caucasian female, standing 5 feet tall, weighing 115 pounds, with brown eyes and red or auburn hair. She has pierced ears and was last seen wearing a pastel-colored shirt, tan shorts, and carrying a black-colored backpack. Anyone with any information regarding Barbara's disappearance or whereabouts is asked to contact Missoula County Sheriff's Office Special Agent Lee Oley at 406-830-8020 or Missoula County Sheriff's Office Special Agent Norm White at 406-830-7006 or Ravalli County Sheriff's Office Lieutenant Zay Hudson at 406-375-4020.
And thank you to Steve Stockton for another missing report. As you can get more just like that of people just vanish into thin air by going to youtube.com/Among the Missing. Hit subscribe, ring that bell while you are there, and we are going to have more stories right there for you. From the missing to the mysterious, let us go to Robin Haynes. We got the Crypted Report. You know, one of these days I'm actually going to record your laughing, and I'm going to install you laughing in your theme song because it is.
I love laughing. I love laughing. How much do you like it? I love to laugh. Like, that's a big deal to me.
Well, we appreciate you coming on in on short notice here to hang on out with us. And, you know, our radio audience can't see it, but your hair looks incredible tonight. It really
Oh my goodness,
does.
thank you. I'm glad. Considering I had all of 10 minutes. So, you know, you got lucky. It worked out really well because I was up working late tonight and I was on the phone 98% of the time. So I just happened to get off the phone at the same time you called, and I never mind, covering for Luke when he can't be here. So it just worked out good. It worked out good. I was actually awake. Normally I would have been asleep. So it worked out good.
Yes. Now, you have been working on a lot of different projects lately regarding
Yeah.
Sasquatch.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Our audience in. You've had a busy start to your 2024.
Yeah, it's an exhausting start, and I wouldn't change anything about it. first I launched my own website, which is www.paranormal-empowerment.com. And on that, you can book sessions with me, whether it's a psychic reading, whether it's cryptid work, ET work, UFO work, animal communication, spirit work, ghosts, whatever it is in the paranormal field. And so you can go on there and you can book sessions with me to work with you privately, or you can contact me under Robin Haynes, not Robin L. Haynes, but Robin Haynes on Facebook. So that's kept me really busy. I've had just a really great response to it. And I literally have the best job on the planet. Like, I love working with my clients, and they end up turning out to be more friends than they are clients. So I have that, but on top of it, excuse me, I'm also working on the Bigfoot Crossroads of America conference, which is also Nebraska Bigfoot Conference 2024 in Grand Island, of which you are speaking at, which I cannot wait to get a giant hug from you. And so
it'll be a big hug.
I know, I can't wait. So we're hard at work on that. And, I'm assistant manager for the museum and the conference. So I've been working on that diligently. And then because that wasn't enough to do, I'm also an active participant in the Cryptid Genome Project with Dr. Melba Ketchum. So we've been working really hard on that and trying to get that done. And it's just been one thing after another. The Foots are working on some projects, and because I do work for them as well, they're kind of sending me to various areas to work on that and teach people energy work to help with, some things that are going on there. There's a big shift coming. And so I'm helping teach people energy work to participate in that shift. And anybody interested can get hold of me. So it's been swamped. It's literally like, if I get 3 to 4 hours of sleep at night, it's a good night. And I would never change any of it. Like, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, you know what? It's a lifetime of love when you can finally do something that you love, and make sure it happens fully the way it does. I mean, for you, being involved in conferences, helping out people is one thing, but you are considered around the cryptid world as an anomaly, because you have the ability to communicate with cryptid creatures, namely the Sasquatch and everything like that. How do you get around the critiques that you have from people out in the field? It's easy to say we don't pay attention to them, but we all have our critics. How do you get around the negativity that kind of goes with what you do?
Well, I'm not going to say it doesn't bother me at times, because I'm human. When people are mean to you and you get picked on and you get bullied, it bothers you. But I look at it this way. I get to see a side of the world that very few people get to. And to me, the rewards are much better than the heartache. I've been working with people for 40 years, over 40 years now, and I enjoy that. If I can help anybody, I'm always amazed that anybody even wants to hear what I have to say anyway. So if I can help anybody in any way, that feeds my soul. So for the people that don't believe in me and everything, that's fine. They don't know me. I have so many people that I've worked with that can back up what I can do and know that I'm accurate and know about me, that I'm okay with it. Like, everybody should be very skeptical of people, because we do have hoaxers out there. I can go to my grave and God knows, and I know that I'm not fake. I'm legitimate as they come. I've never lied. I've never faked anything like that. So when I go to bed at night, I know I'm true. And I look at the experiences that I have and the things that I teach and the things that I know about. I'm not an expert. I don't believe there's experts in this field, but I know are real because I've learned it from them. I've learned it from the Dogman. I've learned it from the Bigfoot. I've learned it from the cat people, from the ETs, from Earthkeeper, from all of these sources that I have access to. If it will talk to me, I can hear it. I can talk to them. And I know that not to everybody, but to some people, I've been helpful. And that's what gets me through it. And so when the haters come at me, I just go back and I work harder. And I just work with the people that actually want me to work with them. And they bring a lot. I feel it's an honor, because they bring a lot of joy to my life. And if I can give back to them for the kindness that they show me, I am more than happy to do that. I think that in this whole big world of the cryptids and the paranormal, it's all about helping each other. Everybody has pieces of the puzzle. There's nobody that is so important or is so knowledgeable that they don't learn. And it's like this big 1,000,000-piece puzzle. and you have all of it but a couple of pieces, and you get those other couple of pieces from other people, and you have to have those other pieces to learn. And so I try not to let it get to me too much. I mean, I'm human, I hurt just like everybody else does. But I found that for my own self, for whatever reason, the haters are pretty minimal. And I don't know why I'm that lucky. I feel very blessed. I do have haters, trust me, they're out there. But I know me. I know me. I know I'm legit. I know what I know. And I don't have a problem saying to somebody, I don't know the answer to that question. That doesn't bother me because I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. And I just feel like I've had enough people as witnesses to the things I can do and the things that I encounter, and enough people that I've worked with that know that if I do a reading, they feel it's accurate. And those are the only opinions that matter to me. Like I said, I get to see a part of the world that very few people do. I mean, there's a lot of people like me out there, absolutely. But I do get to see a side of the world that a lot of people don't. And if it means I have to take on the haters as part of the package deal, I'm willing to do it. I wouldn't change my life for anything.
I think a lot of people are willing to do it too, because I mean, the one thing that we all, can't stand is a lot of people who do critique around here. What they're doing is they're basing their opinion on their own opinion. They're not basing it out of talking to you,
Yeah.
or you explaining anything, how you could emotionally connect to these creatures or anything like
Yeah.
that. You are a rarity out there.
Aw, thank you. You're so sweet. I love you. You're so nice to me.
Thank you.
The thing for me is that for whatever reason, I have these experiences, and most of them I'm not alone when I have them. So it's not like it's all in my head type thing. And I base a lot of the information that I know, I didn't get out of a book. I didn't take a class. I learned it from them, and I learned it by being out there, interacting with them, sitting outside with them at night, doing all these things. And so I know what I know is true. And so I'm comfortable in my own skin. There was a time that I stayed quiet about everything. I came forward because they asked me to. And so I'm comfortable in my own skin. And, for the haters, the thing I say to them, and, I do this all the time, may God bless them with the experiences that I have, so maybe that they can see the truth. I can't fault them because they haven't had the experiences that I've had, so they aren't able to get what I know to be factual. I think everybody has a right to their own opinion. I respect everybody's right to their own opinion, even if I don't agree with it. And I just live by the rules that if you can't say anything nice, then shut the hell up. It's just
Very true.
That's how I do it.
Very true. Out of everything you've experienced, or out of all the stories you have heard from people from around the world about their encounters with cryptids, what one sticks out with you the most?
I think on my own experiences, like I take everybody else's experiences, and it's not that I don't believe them. I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I'm a pretty good read on whether people are lying or not. Even if I think someone isn't being 100% honest, I will at least give them that time and that floor to tell me their experience. And I'm never going to go up to somebody and say, I think you're full of crap, because that's not my experience. So I don't feel like I'm in a position to judge that. My own experiences, I think for me, having them bring, a baby to me so I can see the baby, or going out in the woods and having them all approach me. I used to go out, and I've said this on the show many times, 2:00 in the morning, I'd go out and sit out there with them, and they would walk around me, and they'd chat, and they'd chant, and they'd do all kinds of things. Just being allowed to see into their world is phenomenal for me. Going out there and having them come, 8 to 10 feet and stand there. I wouldn't trade that for anything, for anybody, for any criticism. I don't care if there's criticism. I would never turn that away. And every time you see them, and I think that this is safe to say for everybody, it's like the first time all over again. You are never not amazed. And when they care about you, the kindness and the love that you feel that comes off of them is tremendous. Like, our people don't love that as deep as they do. Everything with them is at a higher frequency. and a higher energy. So every emotion is higher, and it's just incredible. I feel safer out in the woods with 100 of them than I do 100 of our people that I don't know.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And, I understand that, but, we hear stories of everything, whether it's from David Paulides or Steve Stockton about, Sasquatch potentially taking people.
Right. And they will.
Why? Who? Give us an
Well,
example.
I think first of all, we need to realize that these, whether it's hard for people to accept or not, they are a human hybrid. And if you look at our own people to start out with, we have rapists, murderers, pedophiles, all these schizophrenics, people that are mentally ill, not by their own choice, but they are dangerous people that, you get these gangs and they're killing people just for the sake of killing them. So we're not exactly squeaky clean either. And so then these are human hybrid, and you have some that are kind in nature and others that are not. Have they ever taken people and killed people? I'm going to be honest with you and say, yeah, I think it's important that people realize that there is good and bad in everything. Everything has free will, which means it has the right to choose whether it's going to be good, whether it's going to be bad, what it's going to do. And so just like our people, they also, with their people, have good and bad. Have I encountered bad ones? Absolutely. Have I been bluff charged? 100%. Down in the lower part of Texas, I was bluff charged. And it got close enough where it brushed the hair right off my shoulders. And, so those things do happen. But predominantly what I've been met with all of the cryptids that I've dealt with, is love and kindness. The Sasquatch especially have saved my life 6 times. I've had the dogmen save my life a couple of times. And I feel very blessed that they even cared enough to consider saving my life. Sorry, little butt. But the thing of it is there is good, bad, and everything. If you go and you buy a puppy and you bring it home and you bring it into your family and you raise it, 50% of the time they're wonderful, 50% of the time they're aggressive. Everything has free will. You're never going to find anything that's all good or all bad. And in my opinion, for whatever it's worth, I don't want something that's all good or all bad or neutral, because you don't know what you're going to get. When you get something that is what I call in the neutral phase, which is, they could go either way, you never know what to expect. If you get something that's all good, it's all good to the point that it upsets the balance of what is supposed to be. And that's not healthy. That's not good either. And the same thing with the bad. There's supposed to be that equal balance. And the only way you get that is by free will and the choice to be good or bad. So when people talk to me and I see these people and everything with the Sasquatch are all unicorns and rainbows, and I'm like, I think it's a lovely thought, but the reality of it is that is not the way it works. Now, predominantly, there are more good than bad. I will say that. But then you have areas where the bad tend to go off by themselves and kind of gather, their people all together, and they hate us because, well, we're just not kind. And then the good ones go off by themselves. So, pick and choose your areas. Like, people go to the LBL. When they go to the LBL, they go there because they don't care if they have a good experience or a bad experience. They just want an experience. People get killed just trying to get an experience. And then what happens is we go to that area where the bad ones are at. We poke that bear because we want any type of reaction from them and an experience from them. They kill somebody. The government goes in and kills all of them when we're the ones that went there to begin with. I'm not defending their actions, but it doesn't get justified because we're the one that went into their area. Respect the fact that those are bad. Stay the hell away from them. You want to get an encounter, go in an area that is predominantly good. Sometimes we don't know until we're there. Feel the energy around you. If it feels off, if it feels unsafe, that's your cue to leave. But interacting with the good ones and having positive experiences will get you experiences for the rest of your life. And that's what you want. And when you have the positive experiences, you get that exchange, you get that communication, you get the teachings, you get the learnings. They start teaching you from the moment they have contact with you, and it's very subtle, and it will continue your entire life. I'm working on some projects right now with them that back in 2013, they had me do work on. And I was like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the point of doing this? I don't see a benefit for it.
Right. You're there. Robin, hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. The Crypted Report with Robin Haynes continues on Spaced Out Radio right after this. Stay tuned. We will be right back. We're going to enjoy ourselves a little more right after this on the Cryptid Report. All right, we're clear. Fun times.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Well, I didn't expect it tonight, but it's fun for sure. I'm out here in the cold. But when I go in the house and do it at night, then the dogs wake up and then they want to climb all over me. The cats want to climb all over me. And then it gets loud and it's like, it's just easier to go outside. So I'm sitting out here in, 35-degree weather in the middle of the night.
Do you have snow down there?
I don't have snow down there. And, it's actually warmer than I'm sure it is for you. Like back in Michigan, my son called today and he's like, Mom, it's -4 here. And I'm like, well, it's 50 here. Tonight, obviously it's colder, but it's not nearly as cold as a lot of places. People are getting hammered with that polar vortex. And, so are the cryptids. And I was thinking about it today. If you really think about the cryptids with all this cold, they're such a high vibrational being and a high energy being. The vibration alone will keep them warm. If you really stop and think about it, a vibration is movement and it's a frequency. That alone is going to keep them warm to an extent. And it's like, I would see them when I was in Michigan and there'd be 2-3 feet of snow and they're out there moving around and it doesn't even bother them. Look at the Yeti in the Himalayas. They don't look cold at all. I know the ones from the South, when they would come up to Michigan, because the one was a mate to one that was in Michigan when it was cold. She froze. She was freezing. So he would build fire for her. But I really think there's something to this vibration thing that maybe that helps keep them warm as well.
I know that, put it this way, it's warmed up about 16 degrees here. Okay. And so, like right now outside the studio, yesterday outside the studio, it was about -27. Or no, 2 days ago, about -27. Today we're at -12. That's Celsius. Okay. It's like a heat wave right now going on.
I know. And, I'm born and raised in Michigan. I'm used to this below freezing temperatures, but I've been down here in the South for going on 6 years in March. And it's like, I'm so not used to it anymore. I need to get conditioned for it, and I'm moving. So, but I'm still, more in the southern states where it's going to be warm. So I'm still not going to get that kind of cold anymore. But I do miss the snow to a degree. Like, I don't want it. Like Michigan, you'd get it for 6-7 months. I don't miss that part. But I wouldn't mind it for a month. I do miss it. And I'm not, I keep being in these southern states. I'm not that girl that wants to be in the heat. I'm just not. 70 degrees is my comfort zone. Like, put me between 60 and 70, maybe 75, and I'm a happy woman. But I either get too cold or too hot. So
I know the feeling. Know the feeling all too well. But that's okay.
yeah, I mean, I guess, in the summertime when it's over 100 degrees, it's called air conditioning. You just suck it up and go in the central air, but you get that cold and you just can't warm up again. You can put blankets on. But the heat does me in more than the cold does. But you get acclimated to it.
Oh, very true. Very true. Very true. And like, it's funny because I was telling my dad the other day that we had a good laugh over it. When I first moved up here, I'd never been in really cold winter temperatures before. Because
Yeah.
growing up near Vancouver, I mean, you get the odd day that was cold, but very rare. Not like in like a full winter. And so,
Yeah.
like, when I first moved up here, -15 was brutal on me. Then it moved a couple of years later, it moved up to about -17. And then a couple of years later, moved up to -19, 20. That, okay, I could take -20. Okay, then it moved up to like -22 isn't bad. Okay, and then it moved up to about -25 is okay.
Yeah.
But like you get into that -30, 35 stuff, that sucks. Okay.
No.
And now it's like, it's weird how the human body can acclimate to
It
that.
does. And I think we forget too that the cryptids do as well. It's not like they've been inside the house and all of a sudden they're getting blasted with this negative weather. They've been acclimated through it the whole time, through the summer, the winter, the fall, the spring, all of it. And they just their ability to adapt is uncanny. They don't migrate. They may choose, like with the one from Florida, and she would come to Michigan to be with her mate there. If it got too bad, she'd go down to her mom's back in Florida.
5 seconds. 5 seconds. Thank you to all the super chatters out there. We're going to continue with Robin here on the Cryptid Report right now. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag is raw. Well, follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Robin Haynes is here for the Cryptid Report as we are hanging on out, talking amazing cryptid stories. And, with all the cold going on around North America at this time, Robin, it makes you wonder, how do some of these cryptids operate? How do they get around? What are they feeding on when, even the deer are buckling down and hard to find right now?
Well, to begin with, they've been gathering food for a long time. They start even before fall hits, and they'll stack them up in the cave systems or whatever. And I think we had talked one other time about in Michigan, I had gone to an area with somebody, and the DNR the week before had filed a report because somebody found in a cave these giant footprints all over the place, and 14 deer that had the intestines and heart and liver and things like that ripped out of it. And the deer were just stacked on top of each other in this cave. There was vegetation that had been taken and packed in there. And they raid the farmers' fields, they steal the corn, they, whatever they got to do to survive. And they do stack the stuff up. They're not stupid. They get stocked up for winter. So if they can't get out, if it gets too bad, there's already food there. If hunting is low, then they've already got food. Not that they won't hunt in the winter, they will. But they have backup. That clan isn't going to go hungry. Once in a while you may see one that gets a little thin, but for the most part, they're pretty well prepared. And then, there's always the fact that, regardless if it's a hard pill to swallow or not, they are multidimensional. There's a portal they can get into at any time, and they will go somewhere and get food, even if they have to bring it back.
Okay. If they aren't hunting, okay, let me ask about the hunting, because I know I ask you this frequently, but I'm just trying to rephrase a question here because I do have something on my mind. When they go hunting, do they go hunting in packs, or is it solidarity? Or, pardon me, singularity?
It depends. I've seen them out by themselves hunting, but I've also seen, where they've sent what I consider to be called the hunters out, where there's 2 or 3 of them, and you'll see at times where 2 of them will run a deer into a certain area where another one is waiting to grab at it. It's not uncommon to see, 2 or 3 of them working together, if not more. But I've also, been outside where I've, seen one by itself, and it's, taken down some type of small game or whatever. They had one there, not they, but there was one that was in the back of my woods one time, and this was when in Michigan. And I had been walking around out there, and I knew he was by himself. And he took a rabbit, killed the rabbit, ripped the head off, and then put the rabbit out in the walk path that I was on so that I would have the rabbit. So I just think, again, we have to always remember that these are individuals. They're, each clan is their own little thing, and the leader is going to run it the way they want. Are there hunting parties for them? Absolutely, yes. That doesn't mean an individual won't go on their own, but generally it's a hunting party, and it is very common to see them work in unison to get a deer, elk, whatever they're working at, and run it into a certain area where others are waiting to get hold of it.
Right. Do they usually hunt in the same areas, or are they migrators?
They do not migrate. I know a lot of people think they do, and I'm sorry that I do have a very large difference of opinion because I've asked them myself. They don't migrate. They will send the hunters to go to follow the herds of elk or deer or whatever that food source is that they're after, but they don't move the whole clan. Now, there has been certain areas where I've seen that they will move the clan, but they aren't migrating. What they're doing is when the food population starts to diminish where they're at and it's getting low, they may take and move a few miles away or in a different section or whatever, and then maybe deplete that food source there and then go back to where they originally started. But they really don't migrate. They truly don't. And we have people too, where you might like it in the cold and you're there year round, or maybe you go, to Florida and you stay there for a month just to warm up or whatever. You're not migrating, you're on vacation. There's a big difference in migration and vacation.
Where do they find water during the winters, especially in the snowier climates?
Well, they'll eat the snow, they'll melt. I mean, they don't have a problem melting the snow. They'll go to a frozen creek, river, whatever, and just pop a hole in it. I mean, they're strong enough, they can pick up a car and toss it. Breaking through ice is a no-brainer. But they will use the snow. I mean, they will find things that they can use, as somewhat like a bowl type thing or something to put it in, or they'll steal a bucket from somebody or whatever they have to do. I've seen where there's been, it looks like little tiny, pieces, or not tiny, but pieces of wood, and it looks like it's been gutted out. And you can see that something's used it to put food in or whatever. I've gone in caves where you can see where they've used various parts of trees or whatever they found, maybe from an old campground or whatever. And there's cups and bowls. And I mean, they don't use them, like we do every single day for everything, but they do that. And they have no problem melting that snow. That snow is going to melt right down to water.
It usually does. It's the
Yeah,
beauty
I
of
used
snow.
to.
But snow also has a chemical in it, a
Yeah,
natural chemical in it that continues to make you more thirsty.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they seem to do fine. I mean, they really do. And like I said, if they're in an area, they're in an area because there's already a water source there, whether it be near a lake, a stream, a river, whatever. There is a water source around, or they're not going to live there because they've got to have food, they've got to have water to survive. So now you're in these cold, cold winters and there's this thick ice. They don't have a problem getting through the ice. They just don't. They will do whatever they have to, whether it's to take a tree and shove it through there or break through it or whatever. They will get to that water because they're not going to be in an area in any type of climate if they don't have the basic necessities to survive, and food and water are mandatory.
That makes sense, because you need one and the other just to survive. We
Right.
hear these stories about Sasquatch getting involved with hunters and having close encounters with hunters. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem to happen often, but when it does, here's one of the things I learned. I took a hunting course this past weekend, and one of the things I learned in that course is when you're in deep forest, the animals over the years have learned that the sound of a gun means free food, and they
Hmm.
come rushing towards that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does,
They will
does the same
follow
thing happen
the
with
hunters.
Sasquatch?
Well, they don't like the guns to begin with because they know it can kill things, but they also know, because they can read intent better than we can, obviously. They know if they're out hunting. And if they're out hunting, they will follow the hunters because it's an easy meal. And I've talked to several hunters that have shot a deer, bow hunted and gotten a deer or whatever, and they go to follow the blood trail, and then all of a sudden it stops. And the blood trail is just gone. It's like it's vanished. And some of them have actually seen a Sasquatch carrying the deer off. And it's an easy meal for them. It's less work, it's right there, and they can feed their family. Would they want to do that all the time? No, they really don't, because they know the gun is a threat. But
Right.
they also, it's an easy meal for their family. And if they're hungry enough, they will do it. I have a good friend of mine that many, many years ago that happened to. He was out and they followed the blood trail and it led directly to a Sasquatch that was standing there with that deer over its shoulder. And it didn't bother my friend. It just simply looked at it, made a noise, and turned around and walked away with the deer carcass.
Well, there's that famous hunting story out of Florida where a gentleman who happened to be a member of the U.S. Air Force was out hunting and in his tree stand baiting feral hogs.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought what he saw was a human coming up in a ghillie suit
Mm-hmm.
behind him. So he drew his weapon downward because he had put the safety back on. And then all of a sudden this Sasquatch jumps, grabs the big old pig, slams its head into a tree, killing it instantly, then looks up at the deer the deer stand and growls at the guy. And right behind him, another one growls
Mm-hmm.
behind the tree he's sitting in. So
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite stories, to be blunt.
Well, my son, one of my sons, I have 7 boys and 2 girls. And one of my sons, all my kids, except for maybe like one, really love to hunt. And so he had the camouflage tent, like a pop-up tent that you can sit in to hunt out of. Number one, they hate camo. To them, camo is associated with death. Camo is associated with hunters with guns. They hate camo. And every time he'd put that bloody thing up, he'd go out the next morning and it would be ripped apart and shredded and it was down on the ground. So he finally gave up on that and did, more the natural thing, to sit in. But he would put bait out because in Michigan, you put bait out. That's what you do. I don't agree with it, but that's what you do. And he went out there one morning and all he saw, the bait was completely gone. There was like nothing there. And there was a pile of white belly hair from a deer. And you could see where the deer was at. You could see where the food was at, but all the food was gone and all that was on the ground was just the belly hair. So we knew that they had probably, just gotten the deer. It came in, started eating on the deer pile. And they were pegging him off, and that's what they started doing. Every time he would get so mad because every time that he would put out deer bait, thinking, the deer would come in and he could go hunt, they would grab the deer while they were getting the deer bait. And the one time he actually did get a deer, he gutted it out back, buried the internal organs, and the next day went out and it was the organs had been unburied and they were gone. There was just a hole left there. But they watch those bait piles. They know that the deer are going to come in. I mean, if you think about it, you can go out there and walk around 200 acres looking for a deer, or you can go to a farmer's place where they're putting bait out for deer and just sit on a log and wait for it to come in. I mean, which one would you rather do?
Oh, I hear you. I hear you.
That's exactly what they'll do. When you put a bait pile out, you're calling in everything. And the cryptids are a big part of that. And they love these feral hogs. I mean, they do. That's a great food source for them. And they will just stockpile them. It's like we're supposed to have wild hogs here in Florida, in South Carolina. I've yet to see one. Never seen one since I've been here, and I live in the woods. And all I hear is all this talk about how they're all over the place and they're tearing up people's yards and everything. I haven't seen one yet. I've been here 6 years. But I also have, Sasquatch all over my yard.
Oh, I hear
so,
you're
but they don't bother they don't bother my mini pigs. They leave my mini pigs alone. I've never had one try to hurt my mini pigs ever. I mean, I always, whenever I'm anywhere, when I've moved or whatever, it's like I tell them, these are my children. These are my pets. They are like my kids. I don't hurt your pets and your kids, and you're not to hurt mine. And I've never had one dog man, Sasquatch, cat person, whatever. I have never had one of my animals hurt. Never. They've been 100% fine. And there's been times I've looked out in my yard and I've seen them up there holding one of my dogs. But they never took, they didn't take them. I had one in Michigan that took off with my daughter's little Shih Tzu, and it ran into the woods, and the dog was just screaming and hollering. And I was out there, and I told it, I said, you take off with that dog and there's going to be issues, buddy. Like, we want the dog back. And I got in the car the truck to drive to the end of the driveway to kind of cut it off. And it wasn't there. So I drove back up to the house, and it was putting the dog on the porch.
It's a lot of events.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been fortunate. I don't have that problem. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I think people need to understand that they may be tolerant of dogs to a degree, but if your dogs are running loose, chasing them, hunting them down, barking, growling, snapping, if your kid or your grandkid was outside in the yard and coyotes came up and attacked them, or a neighbor's dog or whatever, there is nothing that you would not do to protect your children or a family member. And it's exactly the same thing. I'm not saying that some of them aren't aggressive towards the animals, because I know that a lot of people have seen them go up and just grab them right out of a kennel. I have been very fortunate with my groups, but that does happen occasionally because, like, again, free will. But for the most part, I have seen them go after hunting dogs, because here in the South, they do the most barbaric way to hunt I've ever seen in my life. And they drop these dogs off and let them run in the woods with the snakes so that the people don't have to deal with the snakes. And if they don't run a deer out, then they just dump the dogs. And these dogs will attack the Sasquatch. And they had come to the yard several times, the Sasquatch had, wanting help to get away from these hounds. And the hounds wouldn't back off. And they finally went after one of their kids. And they were very, very honest about it. And they said, we don't want to have to do this. We have no choice. And, it was awful. I will forever hear the noise of what it did to that dog. But I'll be honest with you, if those dogs were attacking one of my kids or my grandchildren, there is nothing I would not do to get rid of it. Nothing.
Well, I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, it's family first. That's what it boils down to. But there are aggressive ones that will do that. Absolutely. I've not had that experience personally. I know people that have, but I have not. Like, the dogmen have never bothered any of my animals. I have more feral cats here than anybody should ever see, witness, or even know exist. And they all come to my house. It doesn't matter what I do. They show up here. At any given time, you look around my yard and there's nothing but cats everywhere, and they're all wild. I can't even touch them. But they show up here, and I've got dogmen here. I've got cat people. I've got ETs. I've got Sasquatch here, and not one of them has ever been harmed, ever. I have a sulcata tortoise, and he has a pen, and I don't leave him outside overnight, but like, I'll put him out during the day when it's warm, obviously. Right. They don't bother him either.
Well, I think that's a respect to the relationship that you have. I mean, but for every yin, there's a yang. What is
Absolutely.
the yang? What is the yang to the Sasquatch story?
Well, I think that's an important thing, is that for every good one that there is, or every, I say the ratio is more 5 good ones to 1 bad one, but there are going to be aggressive ones that are not tolerant of our people. They don't like our people. Our people kill what they don't understand. And they're aware of this, or they're just nasty to begin with. We have people that are like that are just nasty human beings. Like, it's like, you can't understand why they have that kind of hate that lives inside of them. Hate will eat you alive. It's a wasted emotion that I don't even entertain. And so there are bad ones, and they will hurt. They will do bad things. They will kidnap children. They will hurt adults. But our people are the same way.
If we look at the orca family, killer whales, they do everything as a team. Okay?
Absolutely.
Every now and again, they have to kick out a whale due to its attitude, shall we say.
Same thing with Sasquatch. Okay. Years ago, and I know how crazy this sounds, but everything I say, everybody thinks is crazy anyway, so I'm going to go with it. There was a clan that I used to mind speak with, and one of them got kicked out of the clan. And we couldn't figure out why, because he always seemed so nice. And he finally, one day, I said, I just want to know, why did you get kicked out? Like, you're living by yourself. You're not allowed with the clan. You're just in solitary. And he said, I peed in the cave. We laughed until I thought we were going to cry. And I said, I thought I misheard him. So a friend of mine who also mind speaks asked him, and he said, I peed in the cave. I wasn't allowed to pee in the cave. And I thought, how bad do you have to be booted out of a Sasquatch clan for urination in the cave? And I thought that was the funniest thing. And I never forgot that. That was years ago. And I still, to this day, I laugh about it. And I thought, okay, I guess if you're peeing in the cave and you're not supposed to, you're in big trouble now. But I thought of all the things to get booted from, but they will. I've known of one that raped a horse and was out of control. That one was booted out of a clan. Another one did try to harm a human, which breaks. They have laws. They do have laws. And it goes against the laws. If we aren't hurting them, they're not allowed to hurt us. So those will be removed. You go back to the Patterson Gimlin situation. Patty got kicked out of the clan because she led humans towards the rest of the clan and the children. So she was labeled a traitor. And, to this day, if I participate in any events and they try to celebrate anything with Patty, I get backlash because they labeled her a traitor and to their people. And, so there is, they'll boot them out. There's a lot of them. And that's why you see a lot of them that are on their own and they're without a clan. They've done something. They've broken a law, whether we find it a justifiable law or not. Our understanding is not required. And if they break the laws, if they go against what the laws for the clan are, they boot them out. They're more of a corporal punishment type of people. They believe in an eye for an eye. And if you aren't going to conform to the laws of the clan, you're out. Figure it out by yourself because you're out of here. They work as a collective consciousness. And if you can't work in that collective consciousness, they're done with you.
Robin Haynes, it is that time of the night where we have to say goodnight to you. And thank you for filling in on short notice.
Not a problem. Glad I could help.
We love you around here, my friend.
I love you too. You guys all take care.
Do me a favor, quickly mention the dates of the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference.
Okay, it'll be April 26th and April 27th, 2024 in Grand Island, Nebraska at Fauner Park. And we would love to see everybody there. It's going to be amazing. I think this is going to be one of our best conferences yet. We're in a much better venue, a lot bigger venue, and we've got more vendors.
Awesome. Robin Haynes, thank you very much. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up with a guitar god of self. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAM, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyrighted by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. Thank you, Robin Haynes.
No problem, sweetheart. You take care.
We'll talk on Thursday.
Okay, love ya. Bye.
There you go. Robin Haynes, everybody. How fun was that? Turn that light off. Oh, that light bugs me. Give me 2 seconds, guys. All right. Weird show. Catch you all tomorrow. Who is on tomorrow? Merle is back tomorrow. Get ready to Merle it on up, people. Start practicing because the shit is going to hit the fan as we go Merle on Merle with the Merle. Slowly but surely that is getting moved. Yeah, Merle tomorrow night. That's right, Deb. Swing away, Merle. Anybody remember that movie? Swing away, Merle. Where did they go? Excuse me. Oh, I opened up the wrong program. That's what I did. Dave is doing better. Hair is growing out nicely. Feeling good. Hi, Zune. How you doing? No most of the hair. No. No. Yeah, the hair's not really cooperating right now. God. All right, guys. Thank you tonight to W. Decker, Mama Catherine, Shaq, Jeff, Dutch Hank, Louie, Pam, Flat Six, Peter, and Human Carl for the amazing super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support. And tomorrow night we got Merle. So make sure you all dress for the occasion because you know Merle's going to be dolled up as per usual. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Thanks for coming on in tonight. Appreciate it.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.